All right, I'd like to open up the Inland Wetlands Agency meeting of April 4th, 2022 at 7:04 p.m. We will begin with our regular meeting items on the agenda. So we have application 22-12, 56 Tuxas Road. And do we have someone here for the applicant? Or so essentially this application is, we didn't do a site walk because most of us had done a site walk previously. And it's a request to replace the old pool with a new pool that is closer to the wetland.
Yeah, good evening, Chuck Mandel. I'm the agent for the applicant and owner, Dan Dolan. 56 Tuxas. This is actually a previously approved application. The owner during construction found that the original pool was actually unsuitable for salvage. So they're going to put in a 12 by 20 square pool. It was an irregular shape. It's going to still be within the existing patio area or the original patio area and within the original fencing of the original pool. So it's actually a shift of about 3 feet closer to the wetlands. And Aaron, do you have a copy of that plan so you could get a quick look at it to share?
So
Sure.
you're referencing, this is a new application. You're referencing the previous application that was approved.
Yeah, I mean, I was hoping to do a modification, but I guess this is a brand new application. But the commission's has seen this several times. They did the walk.
Right.
It's actually a 3-foot shift in the pool. So if you zoom in a little bit to the pool area, it's behind the garage area. So the red box is the new pool, and that's irregular blue shape with the existing pool. And where you see the existing stone patio, it's still within the patio area, and that dashed line is where the fencing is going to be.
So is there a reason you can't shift the pool instead of shifting it 3 feet closer, 3 feet back?
There was no room for to walk out from the house, and he needed just that extra 3 feet would make it a little bit more comfortable for the area to be in there. Like I said, it was all within the existing pool area. It was really just shifting the actual pool itself, the 3 feet, but it's still within the existing patio area.
Except this is, you're going to be replacing a pool, right? So you're going to be digging stuff up, and I mean, this is more than just shifting a pool, right? You're taking one out.
Right. Well, yes, they will
in.
be construct. Yes, absolutely. Yep.
Okay, this is Joe. Can I be heard?
Yes.
Okay, after we did the site walk, was this dormant or did this get approved?
This was approved.
Okay, so
not this.
No, I'm sorry. The previous application was approved.
So we approved something previously. This is a new thing that we're seeing. This was
Correct.
not included in the previous application.
Correct, but we never changed the silt fence, the area disturbance, nothing else has changed on this. It was really just the 3-foot shifts.
but
Right.
after this,
Not just a 3-foot shift. It's replacing a whole pool.
Okay,
Putting
place in
new-
the pool. Yep.
Okay,
But
sorry,
we-
Joe, go ahead.
that's okay. But we approved since the site walk, the actual replacement of a pool with a
No,
bigger pool.
I don't think so.
Okay, that's what I'm asking. I don't remember this coming in since the site walk.
No, we didn't. There was nothing about a pool in the original. It
So
was
this
a
is the
driveway
first
shift.
time.
This is our first time with the pool.
Okay, so I was gonna say, if this is a modification, maybe give it to John, but this is our first time. I'm good with scheduling it for next month.
Well, actually, you received it last month, so you could act on it tonight.
Ah,
So, I mean, we could,
I'm just saying you could. It was received last month.
Yep.
okay.
so this is our chance for the agency members to ask questions about this replace pool.
And the difference between it being received and tonight is the pool is smaller.
Correct. It will be, the new constructed pool will be smaller, yes.
Than what it was when we received it.
No,
No,
Okay.
No,
See,
this
this
is-
is the trouble with me not getting paperwork. So, okay, understood.
So
It's
we,
different
yeah,
from proposed on the sidewalk.
we didn't, the pool at the site walk, and this was last year, I think, was not at that time, wasn't part of the application.
Okay,
So this is, so at that time, it was looking at shifting the driveway and shift, there were some other shifts going on, but it didn't, at that time, there wasn't anything about the pool. So this is our first time, we've walked that property, but this is our first time talking about taking the old pool out and putting a new pool in.
okay, now I understand.
And so, I guess one of my questions, and I understand it might be more comfortable, but this is non-trivial, right? To take out a pool and put in another one, and you're proposing to shift it closer to the wetland. And it looks like, it's 3 feet, but we're already, the old pool is what, 26?
No.
And now we're going to be 22, 24 away from the wetland boundary, like not just regulated activity, obviously, but the actual wetland boundary.
But it was previously on a pad, it's still on the same patio.
I understand, but
Okay.
is that patio, I mean, what's happening to that patio when you take the pool out and then put another one
They're
in?
gonna, put a new patio in, of course.
Okay,
In the same footprint, yep.
but that's kind of a big deal, right? You're going to have equipment back there and.
Well, I mean, they're already approved, was the addition was approved, and redoing the garage and the driveway, like I said, and the silt fence is intact. The erosion control is intact. So yes, it is a big deal, but they did put a new foundation on that bump out. They put the footings in there. So there is construction that was approved for this site.
Right, but yes, but I think we need to move on from that and just focus on our construction for tonight.
Chuck, you indicated that the existing, you have it on the plan, it states existing stone patio, but you're removing that stone patio?
It's going to be replaced with,
Stone
during
patio?
construction, obviously, it's going to get trashed during excavation. So the new stone patio will be put in the same spot.
Okay, your plans don't indicate that, so I would recommend.
Well, yeah, it says
Updating
existing
that.
patio. It's not going to change. It'll be replaced or fixed or whatever damage is done.
So
John?
the dotted line that is like the footprint of the patio, that's the footprint of the patio, correct?
Correct.
Like the dotted line that's outside the blue and just barely outside the blue and the red.
Correct.
That's the existing, and you have an arrow there, existing stone patio. Which
Correct.
is going to be replaced by another stone patio, obviously, because you can't rip out a pool and not affect the patio around it.
That is correct.
Other questions from other agency
How long
members?
ago was the original pool approved? Do we know?
Oh, it's old,
no,
right?
no.
Was that?
Yes, it was almost
three-
unsalvageable. It's from the house when the house was built, I'm sure.
Yeah,
It's old,
70s, 60s, 70s, 50s, something. It's old.
70s.
So before wetlands became a,
70s.
Right,
an
so,
existing commission. Yeah, okay, I just wanted to kind of get my point of reference.
yeah. Other questions? I guess, I would agree with Aaron. It's, you have existing stone patio, but that that is going to change. It's not, I
It's
think,
gonna be the same footprint, but yes, the stone may change, yes.
Chuck, what is the dashed line that wraps around the patio area? Is that the floodplain limit?
The dashed line, yes, that is.
Okay,
Yeah, it's AE 12 to the south, Joe, and we're in an X zone.
okay, yep.
Kayla,
Mhm.
John, I mean, one of the things I'm thinking about is that when I looked at this, it did say existing pool to be removed blue, proposed pool, and it said existing stone patio, but to Aaron's point, it didn't say anything really about the patio. They're showing a setback from the wetlands, 22.5 plus or minus. That's to the pool, but if I'm looking at that dashed line forward to that red line, that patio work is going to be a lot closer than 22.5 feet.
It's like
the
17
wetlands.
feet.
Yeah, the patio actually says 16.6 where the existing patio is.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay. It does, thank you, yeah.
Yep.
I didn't see that. It's kind of faded on what I'm looking at here.
Yeah, no, it is grayed out a little bit. It's not
Yep.
highlighted, correct.
Chuck, is this 14.8 feet from this corner to the wetland line? What is this dimensioning?
Oh, that 14.8, that's from the corner of the patio. If
So
you-
that's the
yeah,
closest
there's
point.
see, there's an arrow on the yeah, right there in that corner. So that's
So this-
14.8 yes, yep,
To the wetland line, so that's the closest
correct,
point.
correct.
Well, I guess, one question I have is, if you're replacing the pool and digging up this patio, why not move it farther away from the wetland? Push that back. I don't, it's going to be a lot of, I know, I get that you have the erosion measures in place and that you've done construction, but, I guess it doesn't quite make sense to me why you have a lot of room there. You've got a smaller pool footprint. Why not shift that back and pull it farther away from the wetland since you're already disturbing it and taking out the patio?
Yeah,
Fine.
imagine they take the 12 by 20 basin, flip it 90 degrees, and then slide it northward.
Yeah, that's if you're just starting all over again, really, essentially, then you can shift it away.
Yes.
I'll have to talk to my client about that and we'll just, I guess we can continue this hearing until next month then, I imagine. I'm not at liberty to tell them we're gonna flip it 90 degrees at this point.
Okay, well, I guess
Understood.
yes, I totally understand that. But I guess, in the scheme of things, our job is to look for ways to minimize impacts and, pulling stuff farther away from wetland boundaries is always a good thing
Nope, I understand that,
for the wetland.
but it's already a developed lot. The erosion control was in place. I was just,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I get it, but it's,
for 3 feet, I don't think it's gonna affect the quality of that wetland, but that's okay. I will go back to my client. I will ask him if we'll flip it or we can put it in the same spot.
okay.
I will certainly ask him that.
Okay, and you can call out whatever you end up doing on the plan, if it's gonna be
Yeah, I'll
replaced.
get some detail on the patio, what it's gonna be, the material and that type of thing.
Okay, well, then I guess we'll see you oh wait, Martin.
Hi, thank you. And I apologize that I didn't make the site walk and just looking at Google, I see that it looks like the wetland surrounding the lot is pretty forested. It looks like it's a pretty well forested edge there. But I'm curious, what the lot is like around the pool. Is it to the right of the driveway as you go around the garage toward the pool? Is that all grass there? Are you walking on
Yeah.
grass?
That was lawn.
Okay,
originally.
lawn, and then between the pool and the existing wetland boundary, was that all lawn as well?
Yes, it was all lawn right up to the wetlands originally.
Right up to the wetland boundary, that's, yeah,
Correct.
okay. And is there a letter from a soil scientist or a plan that states a specific soil scientist delineated those wetlands on the record?
We had Bob Russo flag the wetlands, probably from the previous application. I can get one for this one though. So we'll
Okay.
forget about, we'll forget about the previous application.
All right, okay, that would be good to have it on the record.
Okay.
And did Mr. Russo make any recommendations as far as wetland mitigation in light of the proposed project?
Based on the existing conditions, and it was all lawn, and we were working in the developed area, no, there was really no mitigation proposed.
Okay, did he prepare any letter at all?
No, we don't have a,
No, okay, all right. And
not for this application,
okay.
you know.
Yeah, I agree with other commission members that it does seem to be, you know, obviously close to the wetlands. It would be nice to hear from the soil scientist, and some comment on the plan, maybe some recommendations from him, or simply stating that it's, you know, lawn area and a pool area. It's nothing is changing significantly with regard to wetland impact. Something from Bob that you know, in his professional opinion, based on his understanding of the resources, you know, what the impact might be, simply based on the proximity. I think that might
No
be
problem.
recommended. Thanks.
Okay,
All right. Well, thank you for listening to our suggestions.
I will see you next month.
Okay, great.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, our next is 22-14, 27 Scenic Road. So I looked through the minutes, and last month it was received, but it was also noted that the health department had wanted them to shift the position of this proposed shed. Is that right? Due to septic issues. Okay, and that I assume has happened?
The plans that I looked at today look like the same ones I saw last month.
Okay, that's what it looked
In
like to
fact,
me, but I wanted to check.
Yeah, there were two options. One showed a shed very close, actually touching the leaching field.
Okay,
And the health code is going to dictate that that's got to, you know, it's on gravel, so it's more or less temporary, but it still has to be 5 feet. So I did a little sketch and showed the shed being 5 feet away from the leaching field, and it got it about 18 feet from the wetland. The application says 80 feet from the wetland, and I don't know. So I'm confused. They may have relocated this shed to a more complying location, but I didn't see it on any of the, and I may have missed it, but I didn't see it on any of the plans that were submitted with the application, even since last month.
okay. Are you the applicant?
Andrea's here, yes.
Andrea
Um,
Aaron, and live at 27 Scenic Road. My husband and I put in the application. Mr. Delora helped us in the office with the application, and for a storage building to be placed. And we first thought of putting it, I think it was 15 feet from the house, but that was too close to the septic system. So, I mean, we will do whatever you think is necessary to protect the wetlands, to move it. On the side of the house, that was a suggestion, kind of near where the garage is, on that side of the house, but there's tremendous boulders and tree stumps and trees there.
Okay. Okay, so it's not 80 feet, it's 18.
It's a lot closer than 80.
Yeah,
Andrea, this is Erin. This location shows that the shed was going to be placed in the select fill associated with the septic system, so it cannot be approved here. This was the location
Correct.
that John described as not being approved by the Health
Correct.
Department.
Mhm.
And so I guess at this point, we have not received an updated location of where you may be thinking of, yeah, third time's a charm of where we might be able to get the shed located.
I mean, we'll take any suggestion because, we will place it wherever you think it's able to be so that it doesn't upset the wetlands
Well, or the leaching field. I
or the
mean,
leaching field, right?
right. So you're saying that the side of the house that looks nice and empty is not,
In this area.
Right over
yeah.
there, yeah, there's tremendous boulders and tree stumps and trees. It would
Okay.
be,
I'm wondering, Andrea, if we should look at this as staff with you again prior to bringing back to the commission some alternate locations where we can, overlay some setbacks and things like that, and rather than doing that, trying to do it on the screen here this evening.
Mhm.
Does that sound like a more agreeable
yeah.
path here at this point?
Sure.
I think if you could find a place that was 30 feet or more from the wetlands, you could shift it to section 13 also.
Yeah, yeah, I guess it looks tricky with, like, I don't know the zoning setbacks for house. And clearly the leaching field is taking up spots as well. Yeah, so if you're okay, talking with the town staff and figuring out maybe some different options that we can look at next month, that would be great.
Absolutely, sure.
Yeah, it looks like a puzzle that hopefully there'll be some pieces that we
I
can
hope
fit
so.
in there. Oh, Martin.
Yeah, thank you. I was just wondering, I see the wetland line shown on the plans, and I just was wondering what the origin of that wetland delineation is. I don't see a soil scientist signature on the plan or a note indicating who did the wetland delineation and who located it. I think it's associated with a survey that was done in 2020. Maybe that surveyor could provide you with that information, but I think that would be good to have for the record.
What is it exactly that I would need to get?
The words shows the wetland line down toward the bottom of the hill where you see the wetland line. It's sort of jagged triangles where we're trying to stay out of. It says limit of wetlands. And we need to know, usually there's flag numbers shown, or at least something that says a soil scientist delineated the wetlands and this is the wetland line. It needs to be somehow substantiated for the record. Since that's what we're trying to protect, we need to know how that line ended up on that map, that's all.
Okay,
Yeah, your surveyor should be able to help you out with that.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so you can meet with Aaron and John, and we will see you in May.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, so moving on, we have 22-15, 17 Carmel Court. This is one we did do a site walk a couple weeks ago to look at where they want to remove trees and install an in-ground pool within the wetland review area. Looks like we have,
Mike Martochi is here.
okay,
From Poolscapes. Mike, can you hear us?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
great. Well, I don't want to hog all of the talking, so I will let someone else on the agency, if you have questions to ask Mr. Martucci.
Is there a site plan that's going to get flashed up?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. This is what was submitted with the application.
Okay, so if I remember right, this only shows the footprint of the swimming pool, and it doesn't reflect what might be around the pool, like patio, and it doesn't show clearing limits.
Right,
I
because,
think we asked for that extra stuff last time.
right, because as we learned on the site walk, it's gonna be actually at least 4 feet closer to the wetland. Given the
And-
patio.
Yep,
And-
and there's an accessory building above, going above where the pool is. That's not
Right.
shown. And we know that there's trees coming down next to it and in the wetlands.
Yeah, and I guess that would be something, so as we learned on the site walk, the applicant would like to take out trees in the wetland, which wasn't, none of the trees being proposed to be taken out are on this plan. And that, this is really close to the wetland boundary. So we would need to see those trees called out on a plan. I also note, and I'm sure the other agency members note from being on the site walk, that the elevational changes aren't reflected as well.
What changes? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Pardon?
What changes weren't reflected? I didn't hear what you said.
Oh, the
The
elevational
topography,
changes,
yeah.
the topography. So,
Yep.
Oh, okay.
here it looks nice and flat, but in actuality, that pool is kind of down, and that slope, that activity is all, the water is, anything is going to be flowing down toward the wetland, given the elevation changes that we saw on the sidewalk. I think, well, I will speak for myself. I have concerns about taking out so many trees, not only
I don't know. I think it was just one tree that was.
at the sidewalk, it was
Okay,
one
okay.
that we talked about, and it was one in the wetland. And
The
that
one in the actual wetland, there was one. Yeah.
there, yes, and outside the wetland boundary, of course, we're still in the regulated activity area, right?
Yeah,
So-
correct.
So taking out, there was discussion, it wasn't actually clear how many trees are going to be taken out. That is definitely a concern, and something to think about and have flagged. And I guess, I see the challenges on putting a pool here, but, it might be worthwhile. I don't know anything about the septic system, but if that could be consolidated, you might have a better place to put the pool and pull it away from the wetland and not have to take out trees and be 36 feet or closer to an actual wetland boundary.
So,
That's-
so I would recommend the site plan be amended to, one, show the existing area of the septic system, because that was said to be the reason why the pool is where it's proposed.
There is an addendum that shows the septic system. No,
Okay,
if-
we'll need the topography.
Yeah, on one
We'll
plan.
need to show that accessory building, which is on site, and then little X's or circles to show every tree proposed to come down, I think. And then, of course, the exact construction envelope of the pool, because that looks like a basin, 16 by 34, but I'm sure there's going to be more around the pool basin than what's shown.
Okay.
And also show where the ENS, the erosion and sediment, will go on this plan, please.
Like, this should be a professionally prepared plan with topography.
Yeah, it's really close to the wetland, and the tree issue, I think, is going to be non-trivial, given what we saw on the sidewalk.
Fair enough.
Good question. Again, so in the package, there is, the plan that's on the screen, and also a sketch that was prepared by Richard Snarsky, and then it was sort of cut it and pasted onto the label of this map here. Yeah. And it shows the wetland distances off of what I assume to be the house, and kind of rough scaling off the drawing. It looks about right, but it's a 1990 survey, I think, that we're looking at down below. And it's a 2022 wetland delineation with those offsets on it. And I think consistent with everybody else's comments about needing topography and a professional survey, I think that those 8 wetland flags should be surveyed in the field and located onto your site plan as well. So we can have a good solid wetland delineation line on a scale plan and be able to develop a good site plan off of that. And I agree with the other members about really needing to know what the impacts are, how many trees, where they're located. You know, maybe as part of the survey, you know, some trees, maybe 6 inches in diameter and greater could be located in the area. So those decisions can be really clear. And again, maybe Mr. Snarsky has some opinions as to maybe some buffer mitigation in and around the area. And other than that, I think that the pool could be a lot closer to the house. Just, I don't know what's in between there. Again, somebody mentioned the septic system, but you know, that's
as close as it can go with the existing septic system.
the existing septic system. That'll be shown on the plan too. I understand that probably the existing septic and the reserve area. You know, maybe the pool can go into another direction, closer to, you know, the southeast. But I think some options for pool locations would be good. And again, similar to the other application, if the details and around the new pool could be provided, you know, fencing and patio and any equipment sheds and sidewalks that are leading back to the house, and landscaping plan, I think would be great. That's all I have.
Okay, John or Bob, do you have any comments?
I would just echo that, yeah, I think the plans need a significant upgrade. So, because it's just hard to make, and I know it's sometimes you try and present and illustrate with what you have, but it's going to be extremely hard for us to make a decision without, again, where are the trees? You know, I agree that a 1993 survey is tough to kind of make a judgment call like this on, especially when it's more than halfway within the reserve area, restricted area. So I'm on board with what everybody else said.
I agree. We need more detail on the plan. The plan is too general.
Okay, well, thank you to the agency members. And is that, Mr. Martucci, is that enough information?
Yeah, no, I understand. I think we'll hire an engineer and get that submitted for you at the next meeting, if that's possible,
Okay,
or prior to the next meeting.
yeah, yes, yeah, prior would be good. All right, well, thank you. And
Thanks.
we'll look forward to the next version.
Got it.
Okay, all right. Application 22-03, 50 Pleasant View Avenue. So again, this is one that we did a site walk for. And we discussed at our last meeting and had questions that from Mr. Ott, that if he's somewhere, would answered about we had an updated planting from Mr. Snarsky, and a few other updates. There he is.
Hi, good evening. I think it took a while to switch over as a panelist. Are you ready? I lost you for a few seconds. Are you ready for me?
We are ready. I was just
Okay.
filling air, filling space.
Okay.
Are you ready for us?
Yeah, I am. For the record, I'm Mike Ott. I'm a licensed professional engineer and land surveyor with Summerhill Civil Engineers and Land Surveyors with an office on Wall Street in Madison. Did the agency, has the agency member seen the revised plan as well as the letter report from Rich Narsky?
Yes.
So should I share my screen, or could I share my screen?
Yes.
Sure.
So can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, so this large, so I met out after the last meeting. I met out on the site with Rich Snarsky from New England Environmental, and he looked at the site again, looked at the wetland, created that letter report regarding the wetland, and I think maybe most importantly, came up with a wildflower meadow seed mixture for the upland area around the wetland, and that's indicated by this gray shaded area. And he describes in his report how that area would be prepared and how it would be seeded, and he outlines the seed mixture, and I believe he I can bring it up on my screen, but I believe he indicated that he would monitor it and issue the agency a report in the fall, I think in September. I believe his report says.
Yes, he said he would submit a report in September with photos.
Yep. So that's what we've done since the last meeting. And I can try to answer any questions you might have about his report, but I thought it's pretty straightforward if you've read it.
I had a question. It wasn't clear. Yes, it is straightforward, but it wasn't clear. Is this going to be a no-mow wildflower meadow?
I believe so. I believe in my experience with these that they get mowed once or maybe twice a year, just to keep, if I understand it right, to keep woody vegetation from being established. But generally throughout the year, no, it would not be mowed. Just once or twice a year. We can have Rich clarify that. Rich Snarsky clarify that. But
Okay.
that,
Yeah, I guess my inclination would be to have it be minimally mowed, like, once or twice a year, if that. And I guess, and we talked about this, I think, last time as well, having some clear, I know it'll be a wildflower meadow, but this is a really flat area, and it would be easy to encroach on that meadow. So having, either split rail fencing or, the markers that are like, I don't know, a couple feet high, delineating that area, I think would be helpful in making it really clear that it is kind of a generally no disturbance area. But I'm happy to hear from other agency members.
on my end for a minute, but I think what you were saying, Kealoha, is that it would be a good idea to delineate the limits of the meadow.
Yeah, it would be good to delineate them, like
Yep.
physically delineate them with not just vegetation, but with either split rail fencing or posts or something that we've had in other areas. Just because it's easy, especially in the winter, right, when things die back, that there can be encroachment. So having something clearly delineated would be helpful.
Okay. Yes, I'm sorry. I must have a bad internet connection. It froze again, but before it freezes again, I think we can do that. If you'd like to make that a condition of approval, that would be great.
But other questions before I keep talking?
So
Mark
Mike,
or wait, Joe, you guys can do it out.
real quick, the wetland area is part of the meadow?
No, The wetland area is, if you can see my cursor, I'm kind of circling it. Can you see that? This open area that's not shaded in gray. That's the, with the black triangles, I can zoom in on it, but that's the wetland area.
So the intent is to, unlike last month, put in grass. It's gonna just keep it as an open wetland area.
Yeah, Rich, when I stood out there with Rich, he said we could see this and it wouldn't make much of a difference, but ultimately he decided not to. So it's just the gray shaded area.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Martin, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was just, again, I didn't have the benefit of a site walk. But I know the area, and I've, looked at the Google Earth, and I think at the last meeting we discussed, when the commission did do the site walk, there were stumps and trees down and a lot of, heavy woody debris that were down. And then the wetland was there in that, essentially that bowl. And again, looking back at Google Earth, I mean, this entire area was covered with trees. It looks like about 100% canopy in this area, and much of, if not all, the house site. I mean, pretty robustly forested. And so there's a 60 by 60 wetland area in the corner of the site, and now it's exposed to sunlight. And I'm surprised that the only recommendation is a wildflower meadow. Certainly it's lovely for the residents. But I thought we discussed some woody vegetation to be proposed around here to provide some shade. I think specifically we mentioned that as a recommendation. And I would suggest that, Mr. Snarsky think about a little bit more in terms of wetland restoration. I know this is just a 60 by 60 area, but it was probably a little bit more impressive when it was surrounded by woody vegetation, and now it looks not so hot. So it's easy to maybe just say, oh, wildflower mix, that would be lovely. And it was a shaded wetland, and now it's fully exposed to the sun. And I think some woody vegetation is in order, some that will eventually provide shade to that area. The only other thing is I would say is that I think that we're on the right track in terms of providing some kind of a physical boundary marker or something that indicates the area won't be mowed and it will be left as sort of a buffer area into the future. However we can provide for that, I think would be good. So that's all I have.
Okay, yes, we did talk about woody vegetation last time. I think it's in our minutes. And that actually was another point that I wanted to suggest. So, Mike, you had said that Rich Snarsky, mowing keeps woody vegetation down, but in this case, yes, this lot was completely cleared, and it wouldn't be a bad thing to have some native, trees, shrubs, something included in the mix there, if possible. Just a suggestion.
Another thing is just in terms of setting precedent here. I mean, if you look at the upland review area, I mean, the entire upland review area was cleared. And so certainly if the applicant came before the commission to build a house and a yard and even a pool, we would have seen the wetland delineation, we would have seen the forested area, and we would have made some kind of a ruling to protect as much of that upland review area as possible. And so I think that's how I'm looking at this, because if somebody can completely, clear cut a regulated area right up to a wetland limit, and we say plant some flowers and a few shrubs and you're okay, what kind of message does that send? I think it's important, and maybe I'm missing something in terms of the history here.
I think the clear cut was more up where the house is proposed, and most of the upland review area was pretty much untouched because there weren't a lot of stumps at all visible down there. It was more up where the driveway and the house is.
Yeah, I think there were some back along the fence in closer to the actual wetland, some stumps. I also don't know the history of who did that clearing. I don't know that when we came to this application, this is what we had. But yes, I think I'm thinking, so I guess it was the southwest had more of the stumps, but I think there were some in the northwest as well. But clearly there had been substantial clearing that happened. There was wood chips and yeah. So I guess I'll just summarize what we've discussed so far. Is physically delineating the wetland or wildflower area, and hopefully perhaps adding some native trees into maybe in the northwest side where they would have been originally. Yeah, and then maybe just mowing once a year or really minimizing that. Did I miss something? I feel like I missed something. Or other comments?
I think it seemed, I guess you have, the agency has a couple of options. I think the applicant would need to grant the agency an extension to continue to May. So you have an option of requesting that extension to allow the applicant to submit some additional information, or you also have the ability to condition, add conditions of your own, such as a physical delineation and, plantings of so many trees of a certain native trees of a certain caliber, or native woody vegetation within that wildflower area. So I guess you can pick which way you'd like to move on, if you'd like to condition it or request the applicant to give you information next month.
I don't think, just my opinion, I don't think we'd need an extension. Because I think we could put it in the hands of John to oversee the plantings of 4-5 trees. I think they've come a long way from proposing all no mow grass to a meadow, which I think is a lot better.
Other comments? Martin, Bob, John, thoughts?
Sure. I apologize that I didn't make the site walk, but all I have to rely on really is the Google view, which looked pretty full. And I'm just, you had mentioned the northwest corner for planting trees. And when I think about planting woody vegetation around wetlands, especially those that cast shade, I think about the south side and the southeast side, because that's when the sun is, highest in the sky and hot. And so specifically, I think that, it's only a 60-foot wide area. So yeah, 4 or 5 trees, maybe along the south or southeast side, trees that'll get to be, 40 and 50 feet tall, and that can be, nice native species, and maybe a few woody shrubs along there too might be nice to have that layer of vegetation in there as well. So we can, I think it's nice to see specific recommendations and planting schemes from the applicant's soil scientist, but I can understand if many of the commission members are satisfied, and then just work with John on a planting scheme. But that would be my recommendation, just some shade from the south and the southeast with some some trees that'll get to be 30, 40, 50 feet high.
I'd like to hear from Mike Howard. Do you concur with what we're recommending, Mike?
Well, I can't really, John, because I'm not a wetland scientist, I'm a civil engineer, but I stood out here with a wetland scientist who did not recommend planting any trees or any shrubs. He walked down into the wetland and did an evaluation. He's the soil scientist and wetland scientist that did the original delineation when we did the subdivision a couple of years ago, when the subdivision came to the agency as a referral for the subdivision application that went before planning and zoning. The applicant did not do any clearing here. We don't know when it was cleared. All I can tell you is a professional wetland scientist and soil scientist has delineated this wetland and come back and looked at it again. And his recommendation is what you see here. That's really all I can tell you as a civil engineer.
He also described it as low value.
He actually said, he said moderate value. It's low value for wildlife, but moderate value for other wetland functions. Is what his letter said.
Okay, I saw low value. I didn't see, I must have stopped there. Low value for wildlife. Okay.
But above it, it's moderate value for other functions. Moderate value of sediment trapping, pollutant renovation, flood storage, and groundwater recharge.
What's on the other side of the wetlands? Maybe Mike, if you know. you can tell us.
Maintained lawns on the adjoining property.
Yeah.
Adjoining properties, this property and this here, this property here, and this property here are pretty much maintained lawns to the fence.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I would prefer that the agency act this evening. Rather than
My 2 cents, I'm
continue
with
this.
Joe on this one. I'm sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry, Bob. I just, rather than continue it, I would prefer that you act on it. If you think that trees need to be planted, without, I don't know. I really don't know what to say. We have a wetland scientist recommendation who's actually been on the site more than once, rather than just looking at aerial imagery. And that's his recommendation. We were asked to have him come back and look at it, and we did. I was with him when he did it, and he's given his recommendation.
So my comment is I'm almost would be misleading. My feeling is I'm with Joe that, we could I guess approve it with contingencies or I don't know, Joe, maybe you could
Conditions.
paraphrase.
Conditions.
But conditions, yeah, I'm sorry. It's been a long tax season. Anyways, but that's I understand that there probably is a good concern about having some kind of shade there. I also understand Mike's point, to be perfectly honest with you, that he had a professional there and that was his recommendation. So I think the people on the ground with John's, oversight can probably get it done. In terms of protecting the wetlands and not making any mistakes here. So, it's 40, it's what, 40? No, we're talking 100 feet in most of the area, right? It only infringes on a small piece of the restricted area, correct?
It's this blue line is the 100-foot upland review area, Bob. And this,
Right.
so this area here is where, excuse me, the septic system.
Yeah, it's where the leaching fields and the septic are going.
Right, right. But again, this is maintained lawn on this property, and this property, pretty much right
Is
up
the
to
lawn where
the.
the leach, is it lawn where the leaching, I'm sorry, I should remember better, but is it lawn where the leaching fields and the septic are going in?
This would be lawn, this spot, yep. So it would transition from a maintained lawn to the meadow. And that's the delineation that Kay Aloha, I think, was talking about
Gotcha.
in here.
And when you say it's lawn, is it lawn now or is it lawn going to be lawn?
Oh, no, it would be lawn. Today, if you recall from the site walk, this is all wood chips, this whole area here, not in this area where the meadow is to be established. This area is all wood chips today.
So there's no established trees in that area?
No, it was all cut down at some point.
Okay.
Right, right.
But before this owner was the owner of this site?
Yeah, and some of the stumps, I think I brought this up when we were out there. There's a pile of logs right here. And some of them, if you look at the ends, they're relatively fresh cut. I don't know when. But there's stumps, there's kind of random stumps throughout this area, I think. And they're old. There are shoots coming up out of them and saplings growing around them, and they just look, they happened quite some time ago. But that's really, when we did the when we first started the subdivision several years ago, this area was, I would describe it as park-like. It had been maintained. There was no understory, and there were, as my recollection is, there were very few, if any, trees. I remember thinking it looks park-like in here. So it's something that was done quite some time ago, I gather.
Yeah, I have a feeling, because it looked really horrible on the site walk, but I have a feeling the meadow plan is actually going to increase the value of the wetland for wildlife.
Yeah, again, I'm not a wetland scientist, but I think if Rich Snarsky thought that this particular wetland in this setting needed to be shaded, he would have said so. We had a long discussion out there about this, and before we went out, and I explained what happened at the last meeting and what was discussed, and that was his recommendation. He actually, I remember him saying in this area here, there are silky dogwoods that are probably 4 or 5 feet high right now. In fact, I think in his letter report, if I remember right, he mentions that. I think he said something about maybe a third or 30% of the wetland is actually silky dogwood now.
He did.
They're kind of, I didn't know what they were, but they're kind of reddish bark. The leaves aren't out yet, but he knew what they were as soon as he walked up to it. And my recollection is it's this kind of eastern side.
So I'd be willing to make a motion if the commission is comfortable. I'd make a motion to approve application 2203 for 50 Pleasant View Avenue with regards to the septic system and the modified plan to plant a meadow area around the wetlands, with the condition that the wetlands be separated from the built-out area by a fence of some kind to help prevent a regular mowing schedule.
I'll second it.
Okay, I think I would like to clarify that the wildflower little mow area that should be physically delineated is in the it's not actually the wetland, it's the regulated activity. Just to be clear that it's within the regulated activity area.
Okay, the meadow area should be delineated, should be separated by a fence to help curtail a regular mowing schedule. So thank you.
Other comments, other modifications or suggested clarifications for this motion?
I do. So by a fence, Joe, I'm wondering what you're thinking, what kind of a fence that looks like it would be a pretty substantial fence. And I think that the intention would be to let the wildflower meadow become natural. It would never be mowed. It would be an area nobody would go into, or what do you, I want to know what you're thinking about that. I like the idea, but I want to hear more what you're thinking.
Well, Kealoha has mentioned that it would be good to go in there once or twice a year to mow. So this fence would have to have some kind of a gate to allow a mower to go in. So I'm going to guess that I don't want to like tell people what kind of fence, but obviously a split rail is a beautiful way to go with a gate. I don't think they're going to put up a 6-foot white panel fence, but there should be, I don't want to say in character with the area, but it's going to be a fence, obviously, that will allow some kind of a lawnmower to go in and get in there.
Yeah, so I think in the past we have suggested when this has come up, split rail fencing. I didn't necessarily say I thought it would be, that is, I think what Rich Snarsky suggested is the once or twice a year mowing. And I guess if it were once a year, that'd be great. Because without mowing and without some kind of management, it will turn into something else, and it could turn into Phragmites, or it could turn into, there are different invasives that could get into something, given that this site is really just down to the bare surface or wood chipped. So I think mowing once a year, maybe twice a year, to maintain the wildflower meadow. I guess I would like to see, I think it's great that Rich suggested, a report in September. I guess I would want to see something a year later as well. Because that, the proposed plan, he's proposing, his letter says April planting, and then, we get a report in September. But I think it would be useful to see what happens next spring and see how it, how is it working? Is it working? So I guess I would add to this motion that it would be good to have not only the September report, but some kind of report, some kind of documentation of what it looks like in a year. But that's a suggestion, not a decree. Are there comments?
I have a comment on that. It's it's not, just so you know, Michael, I'm a soil scientist, so it's not uncommon to have actually 3-year mitigation monitoring plans, to know that things are going smoothly, and there can be as simple as a letter report. And I would just recommend that kind of time frame typically for any kind of plantings, to make sure that things are taking and that the maintenance schedule is being implemented as stipulated.
Other comments? Questions? So I guess.
So if I'm hearing
yeah.
hearing correctly, then I'm sorry, Kayla, but if I'm hearing correctly, then we would want a 3-year, like we have in the past, sometimes a maintenance protocol and or monitoring protocol, and John Delora kind of reports back to us or monitors it, and if there's any issues, he reports back to us. Is that what we're looking for as a condition?
I don't know. So that, I think, yes, we have done that in the past, but I think it's usually the applicant doing the monitor, somebody comes in and gives us the report. I don't think the onus should be on, I don't think we normally have John Delore do that. Someone, usually the applicant, somebody submits a report. At least that's what we've done in the past with these 3-year plans. And I think I mean, yes, so we have done these 3-year plans where we make sure that something like this takes and is being maintained properly. So I don't know, Mike, if that's something that Rich comes out and looks once a year for 3 years and gives us a report, or if we coordinate somehow with the town.
You could put that responsibility on the soil scientist who recommended the planting plan.
Okay.
And then
I would-
he could provide annual reports to the agent, the agency's agent.
Okay.
That makes sense to me also. That's commonly how it's done.
Okay. So I guess our summary is a physical delineation, some kind of hopefully split rail fence that is not, that is hopefully aesthetically pleasing, but also serves as a delineation for the wildflower meadow. Mowing once or twice a year per the planting plan that Rich Snarsky submitted, and then monitoring, a 3-year monitoring of how well this wildflower meadow is being maintained and hopefully flourishing. That summarizes, I think, the conditions. Are modified conditions to Joe's original motion? Are there any other comments? Okay. All right, so we have our original motion. We have the conditions as I've just summarized. All in favor? of
Aye.
this- oh,
Aye.
Aye.
okay. Any
Aye.
opposed? No. Abstaining? No. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Okay. So now we move on to applications 22-06, 22-07, 22-08, Wildwood Avenues, lot 1, 2, and 3. And these, we have done a site walk and had discussions. And we have the engineer to talk about any updates.
I have a quick question. I just wanted to say that
It
I drove out,
it takes
I
a
drove
minute
out to
for
the
it
site
to
last week.
connect up.
Okay,
Go ahead. Sorry, Martin.
that's all right. I just wanted to say I did see the site. I went out on my own, took just a quick walk in and out, just so I could be familiar with the property.
Okay.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes. Okay. So here we are.
Great, great. Good evening, members. This is Jim Galligan from Apis and Young. Representing Mike Delaney for this application tonight. As you remember, we were here last month, and you asked for a couple of specific things related to the application. I'll just briefly cover some of the items. You asked for a signature by Richard Snarsky on the wetland survey map, and if you look on page 2, we've added a block for that signature. You also asked for a letter from Mr. Snarsky. We have that letter on file. In his concluding statement says that in his opinion, all the engineering and design development do not create an impact on the wetlands. We did make a resubmittal to Amanda. She had a couple of technical questions for the drawings, but did not change the plan itself in any way. You did ask for a detail of the retaining wall, which we added to the plans. Just trying to go over some of my notes here, if you'd bear with me. You know, we're not working at all in the wetland area, where we've responded to all the questions that you had. I just reiterate some of the items. You know, we have all of our driveways and access ways are all natural permeable areas, so we can improve groundwater recharge. We also included a maintenance plan for the swale areas and a maintenance plan for the buffer areas. We have on the landscaping plan, we identified locations of 11 locations where we would like to add some posts that delineate the buffer area, if you will, as a trying to look for the specific title for it. Do you have that, Aaron? Do you have the do you want Nick to share? Would you rather have Nick share?
Sure, Nick can share if you'd like. That'd be great.
Yeah. All right, Nick, maybe if you brought up the architectural plan, I mean, the landscaping plan, that would, it shows the locations of the buffers, I mean, of the delineators. And then maybe if you could zoom in on the ones on lot 2, Nick, that might. No, right there, that's fine. If you look over on your your right-hand side, you can see number 9. There's a delineator. Say that 3 times fast. Delineator number 9. If you look over on the left-hand side, inside one of the landscape circles is delineator number 8. If you see the front of the swale area, there's a delineator for the swales that says that identifies them as water-loving native gardens. Keep clear of debris. It's a bioswale. We have one in front of the bioswale area between lots 2 and 3, and we have another one in front of the bioswale between lots 1 and 2. I'm not sure exactly what else that you felt. Did I mention the wall? Yes, we did add a detail for the wall. It's on the site development plans for the 3 lots. I think it's on the individual lots, Nick. I don't think it's on the combined plan.
While we're looking, I also want to mention that those markers 1 through 11, the first one is we'll have an actual narrative that'll say this marker is the beginning of our 10-foot ecology buffer for the benefit of pollinators, birds, and people. And each of these markers is placed at the 40-foot mark, more or less. There are some areas where it's in closer or further away from the wetlands than 40 feet. But we felt that by placing in that location, you would be able to show people that 10 feet towards the driveway or towards the houses is the buffer, ecology buffer, and anything beyond that marker, nobody should be going into to do any sort of work.
So I believe we've addressed all your comments. There's a detail of that wall. And you can see there's no gravel behind the wall. It does meet the state health code as far as distances from the septic systems. Nick, can you bring up those two medallions just so that the commission can see those two medallions? Bear with us while we open up the file.
The medallions will be printed on brass or aluminum and then set into precast concrete, which will then basically stick up about a foot, and then they'll go 2 feet into the ground. So that they'll be both visible, but behind the plantings and notable.
So they're only going to be a foot above the ground?
So yeah, when you see the marker, it's actually
I actually specified that they would be 2 feet off of the ground in my.
That's fine.
Yeah.
And how many are there going to be?
Right now,
11.
Just 11 total for all 3 properties?
Yeah, if you feel like there's more, if you look at the plan, it sort of gives you a line from one to the other. Lot 3 has a lot of zigzags, but lot 3 is also where we've substantially come in from the wetlands.
Why don't you start with the boulder, Chris? Nick, if you could zoom in on the boulder at the beginning of the driveway.
Because sometimes subdivision regs may have a regulation where those are every 50 feet or so. So we have to make sure.
Yeah, right now we have those at I think 100 feet.
Yeah, I think
we're happy to do more if you guys feel like that's appropriate. It's not.
Kayla, I actually suggested 50 feet for each marker, so
yeah,
they've got pushed to 100 feet, but I think Mike Delaney can tell you that we had a conversation about that, and I suggested 50 feet, but he may
That's
not
fine,
want to.
John.
yeah, I think in the past that 100 feet is a lot, especially given that vegetation is going to, in the summer months, it's going to grow up. It's going to be hard. I don't think those will be clearly seen. I think 50 feet is kind of a minimum.
I think it was really important that we explain to people at the beginning when they come into the development with a larger, 8x6 or 6x8 bronze or metal plaque that'll be mounted on the boulder, the description of the buffer that explains, that it's what its purpose is, and then including the actual protected signs behind the actual garden, just kind of furthers that protection to that buffer area.
I think for the agency, in addition to the wetland buffer signage, you can require the plaques along the wetland boundary as well, every 50 feet.
Yeah, I thought we had talked about that at the last meeting as well. Given that boundaries, that the wetland boundary is pretty close in most of these lots.
Right. So just to be clear, are you looking at the actual wetland boundary in addition to the 40 foot?
Well,
Yes, you can delineate both.
I mean, we can, yeah, yeah, we can, I guess we can talk about that, but we can, so we'll put a pin on that to talk about, but I don't want to interrupt other updates that you might want to share before we discuss. Are there any others?
Yeah, Mike, why don't you go into detail, Mike, about the landscaping and the bioswale and so on.
So if you could pull up the bioswale cross section, yeah, there's the plan. So what I've been finding very effective in the swales is to mulch with pea stone, and what that does is it allows for infiltration in a very effective manner, but also because it's basically like bank run gravel, these plants are very adaptable to grow into that, and they flourish. And then the gravel is highly identifiable in terms of that it's easy to maintain, and also that you're not going to have people filling in these swales with debris, because we're asking them not to, but you wouldn't have sediments or soil. You know, somebody says, oh, I got this load of soil, I just did some landscaping, I'm gonna dump it in this place that just looks like a low spot. Well, if it's got gravel in there, that will help identify that very easily for them to maintain that. And right around the outside edge, what we're doing is planting some perennials to give it a highly defined edge that will make it look nice, so that, again, not going to want to mow into that area or do anything in there. And then there's both canopy cover, understory, shrubs, things that would create thickets for plant materials. But all of these shrubs, trees are fairly upright, so that it's easy to maintain for weedy invasives or other things that may want to go into that such a space. If you go to so you could see the sort of cross section about how you can plant in to these, which those root systems will do a tremendous job of being able to uptake the water and transpire it. And then it also creates a nice visual cue for people to know that it's a thicket for birds, but also for their management of their stormwater. When Mike sells each of these properties, I will be doing a walk around and interpreting of the landscape with clients, and then as part of the agreement, I'll be able to go and do a consult with them once a year for an additional 2 years. And then we will also do reports to the commission summer, because I consider that the toughest season for the plants, whether they're getting watered or things are weedy, where we can basically look, make sure everything's working well, and then report back to you all. And so those are so the swales will be part of that conversation that we'll be having with each of the owners.
But of course, this is just the first owners, right? This is just the first set of owners. So
exactly. Yep.
And so owners after those owners are on their own.
Right. But most likely the neighbor next door will be able to inform them because they'll still have the requirement to maintain, and there'll be signage, and there'll also be these plans as well as other items in the house to help them identify and interpret their landscape.
Could we highlight the bioswale signs that will be in front of each one, and then go to the actual sign that we've submitted? So if you look at the beginning of each bioswale, basically in the middle, it says bioswale marker. So on that marker, there'll be a plaque that says water loving native garden bioswale, keep clear of debris. We submitted the actual plaque that we'll use. And so that'll help kind of further, if it is set in a 4x4 cast concrete with an aluminum or bronze plaque, it should last a very long time.
Is there a maintenance plan that's spelled out specifically as far as what maintenance should be in the swale?
Yes, there is. And it's very simple. You keep it clear of debris. And the way that Chris has proposed to use the pea stone, right, just, makes it more identifiable that, when there is debris in there, that it's, very visible. So
Yeah,
this
and
is,
it's very easy to rake. So if they were to mulch it.
Sorry,
for
not to
instance-
interrupt. Are,
Yep.
are the pictures of these plaques not showing on your screen?
No.
No? Oh, hold on. I had them very clearly shown on mine, so I was.
They're in the packet. I saw them.
Aaron, are you able to pull one up maybe? And then we can come back to this buffer garden plan.
As stated, I have them shown both right up on my screen right now, so I'm unsure why it's not displaying.
But within 3 to 5 years, the swales should have full canopy, which will give it a very distinctive look, and it should be very easy to maintain and pleasurable to even visit. So these are the protected wetlands. Here's the marker.
And that's a 4-inch round marker.
What assurances do we have that the driveways will not be paved?
I'm not going to pave them. We could put some language that's been used before to make sure that anything outside of the 100-foot review area, does not get paved.
Well, I think within the regulated activity area.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm happy with that. This is the point. We're trying to, we are trying to look at this from the beginning of how we can implement green infrastructure. And, the conversations going forward have been building material, insulation, solar paneling, HVAC, all of these more green ways of building. And, you guys are at the beginning phases of this.
Just to go back to the planting. So what happens, so we have 2 years where we'll have monitoring, and then the owners are on their own. And so so what happens if we have a really bad drought and lots of things die in those swales? What is their recourse? Like, what are they supposed to do?
So the reality is that most of these are very resilient because they're, many swamps, marshes, wetlands are also drought tolerant plants. Facultative is the term where they're mostly in wetlands, but they can survive or do well in more upland areas. And so most of these plants, especially based on the soils, that was one thing I was thinking about when I was selecting, was because these are not sandy, well-drained soils. These are a little bit heavier, and the plants should be able to develop robust root systems, especially in the with the gravelly substrate that's going to be in there. I don't think, if if plants didn't make it there, they're not going to be making it in the marshes too, because essentially it's the same soils. So, you know, the wetlands would also be suffering at the same pace,
Okay.
which we really don't see that often. And the plants may lose some leaves, but they are resilient and they do come back.
I'd like to add too that on the maintenance plan, which, you know, every homeowner will have, is, you know, it says, you know, we want to encouraging new native plant growth. So this is part of the maintenance. You know, it's part of the garden. We want to encourage them to, you know, encourage new native plant growth.
New native wetland plant growth, or
So wherever there's existing, so for instance, you have a lot of clethra on the site and spice bush that's doing extremely well. And so we want to save every bit of that, but if it's also coming in, we're going to tag it and save it. You know, and let people know that this is what's working. Consult the genius of the place. If it's working, you double down on it. And so also these thick, I just want to go back to one point about drought. When plants are planted with layers of shade, they're more resistant to the drought aspects. A dogwood in a full sun yard is going to suffer mightily, whereas the dogwood at the edge of the forest is going to be able to withstand the drought. So that's just another point I wanted to share. Thank you.
Okay. And I mean, I guess I'll just say it. I mean, I think, and I have said this, so I'll just say it again. I think it's a lovely idea. I think the reality of having people maintain these bioswales and be vested in learning about all these plants, especially wetland plants, and IDing these wetland plants and maintaining that, and not having their yard people accidentally slice it all down. I don't know. I think it's a little unrealistic. I know you've got this plan, and we can talk about, you know, how to ensure that there's recourse if this stormwater management, which is, you know, this is your stormwater management plan for the site. So it's actually really important that this be done right. And I guess I am old and I feel like I don't think, you know, all the people are going to necessarily invest the time in this wonderful way of managing the landscape. So, you know, we can talk about different ways to manage this.
Chloe, I don't think the plants are the identifiable. They're not going to be the only. The swale is what holds the stormwater, not the plants.
Right, but yes, but the swale is still, I understand you're going to have gravel and I understand all that, but I have watched people all over town fill in wetlands because, you know, they want to grade their yard or their landscapers do something, and things happen. And in this case, you are predicating a lot of your stormwater management on this system, and I'm not, you know, we have talked about this, you know, and we can talk about, you know, options for hopefully having this, you know, be maintained. But it, you know, I guess I have seen enough people either wittingly or unwittingly in town, you know, go on their property and say, this is my property and this is what I want to do. And, you know, you're talking about educating the first round of owners, which is great. But that doesn't get the next round of owners or the next round of owners. That's all. And it's just, this is something I said back in November. This,
I hear,
you know,
I hear. These locations are obviously far away from the lawn areas down a pretty dramatic slope. I think there will be enough signage and cues that that would be, if they were wanting to do something, they would go and dump it over the walls and other parts of the landscape. These will be the least accessible to where they would want to do that. But I'm hearing what you're saying. And I'm disappointed by that. I have people that love, they have me put in swales all the time, and we have people asking for them in front of their houses in New Haven.
And I think that's great, but you're having owners ask you.
Yeah.
These are people who are not asking for it.
No, I know,
These
but
are people who are going to be, told this is what you have.
yeah,
I think that's a big difference.
Yeah, it's a little bit like the people that are going to choose this are going to hopefully choose it for nature. And I'm going to guess that at least 2 out of the 3 homeowners here will probably be bird lovers, nature lovers, and connected to the land. And there'll be a conversation that should be happening. And if the town wants to go and check on this, every once in a while, I don't know what mechanisms there are for that, for enforcement, but these are best practices, that we're trying to employ here.
No, and my
It's
20-year-old
right.
self is fully on board, but my older
Yeah.
self is, jaded and, world weary, and just watching the reality of what people
I
actually.
watched the one before us, and I was just shaking my head. So,
Right.
Cut down all
I mean,
this.
Kaloa, we have designed these where they're shared. So each lot owner, they're woven into like every owner has this woven into its property, so they all share it.
Yeah.
When I started looking at this, I started looking at the Watershed Infrastructure Act that was passed in 2019 to try to encourage development, to try to encourage infrastructure like this, and how we could start from the beginning by doing a green build. And so I looked at what that act was, and I tried to follow it. I tried to follow a lot of the premises of it, and this is really what you're seeing. With Chris's help and
Can I
Jim's.
make a suggestion? I know it may in the last meeting, you all talked about putting a fence around this, around a meadow, right? No-mow meadow, which I think can help with that delineation. Would you feel that if there was a split rail fence on the household side of each of these, that would help with the protection of this?
I have a thought on that before anybody answers.
Thank you.
If I may. So I just have first of all, a question. The distance between your landscape line and the wetlands looks consistent on both sides. What is that distance? I'm sorry, I don't recall.
It's 40 feet.
40 feet between those 2 points. Okay.
But Martin, I don't mean to cut you off. We are not touching any existing trees in between 40 and 50.
Right. Okay. So that was part of my question was, what's happening with that existing, buffer area? I mean, what does it look like now? I know there was test pits were done, surveyors came through. What do those buffer areas look like now? Are they great?
Yeah, you can see on the plan, anything labeled T is existing.
Yes.
Okay.
And we're also you know, we put ribbons on all the spice bush that was all throughout there. And then there's a large section with clethra,
Okay.
you know, that we were supplemental planting into these areas.
Right.
You know,
So we have markers that are, you know, talking about how these areas were planted. I love the language in them. It's great. But maybe we need something, you know, to Kaloa's point, something that is you know, call it a wetland, call it a conservation easement. I mean, can we do a conservation easement here, 50 feet from the wetlands and demarcate it with posts and put it on the as-built drawings and put it on the deed? And, you know, let's call it a conservation easement area where everybody knows, you know, you can't go in there and cut things down, and these plantings are, you know, going to make it. I think that's one way to, I think it's the best we can do in terms of long-term stewardship of that area. Because, you know, we've seen it, right? People go in and they want to have a larger sandbox for their children, or they bought an electric ATV and they want to have their kid ride it through the woods. So people want to have paths through the forest, and that's all good. But I think a conservation easement, a 50-foot conservation easement from the wetlands that stipulates, you know, no cutting, no clearing, and, you know, no construction of any kind, and have it go on the land records.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if that would appease concerns. By the way, I love the planting scheme. It's
Thank
incredible.
you, Martin.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Thank you, Martin. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
The swales themselves are inside, you know, that amount. So, you know, I and it's a pretty steep grade, you know, where the house is back onto the wetlands, not the driveway side, which also makes an impediment to getting at. But I'm wondering, are there other solutions? I mean, we are open to working with you all and trying to figure out how to make everybody feel comfortable with what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see a synergy here. We need, you know, because. Sorry.
Maybe if I could jump in for a couple of minutes here, just to back up, Keila, you know, Mike chose this stormwater management method here because he didn't want to do underground storage, and underground storage is great. Nobody gets to see it. It goes underground, but it doesn't always work either. You know, if the roof leaders have leaves and stuff in them, and it all fills into the underground storage. Not only do you have a situation where the ground, the system isn't working, you also have a condition where you don't know the system isn't working anymore, because, you know, because it's hidden underground. The reason why Mike chose these bioswales was because they're visible, and you can see if there's an issue. I think Martin's proposal to put a conservation easement, I would need Mike to approve that because it's his properties, but it doesn't sound like a problematic suggestion. I think that right now what we have is a project that even the wetlands scientist who signed the plans says there's no impact on the wetlands. And I think that I'd like to be able to recognize that the application as it sits today has no impact on the wetlands from an engineering standpoint. It has no impact on the wetlands from the soil scientist standpoint. And the suggestions for putting a conservation easement, Mike, do you have a problem with that? Or
could you explain to me what what that means, though? I mean, we're not giving up the property to the town, right?
No, conservation easement is basically where you're at right now, except for it's formally delineated. I mean, it's going to say that you can't go in and go in and put a driveway in the area that you've got already covered off. I mean, from my standpoint, Mike, what you have here is everything but a conservation easement, except that it's not delineated on a map. I mean, you've got a buffer here of vegetation that is really going to prohibit people from getting into the habitable space from getting into the rest of the property, and they'll still be able to use the conservation easement. They can walk it, they can do those types of things, but they can't build in it, they can't fill in it, they can't excavate in it. Those types of things.
Yeah, I mean, this is the reason why the buffer is there. I would 100% change the language on those signs, and if we could come up with the terminology, and now I would, if you want to make that if you want to make it a condition of approval, I would 100%. I would love to use that language. I was hesitant to use the word conservation. I initially wanted to use it, but I was hesitant because I didn't know if it was actually truly conservation land. So, but yes.
Okay.
Go ahead, Carol. I'm sorry.
I think we'll have to have Aaron jump in on the language for conservation easements. I think there are different ways that you can delineate that. And there are legal ramifications. There can be, depending on what you call it. Like if this is not going to be a legal conservation easement, that's one thing. I do think that, and Aaron can correct me if I'm wrong, I think that if it is some kind of official easement, that then it obviously it will have to be on the plans. And I don't know if there's anything beyond that, if we need different language for that as well. I just want to be clear. I love green infrastructure and bioswales, but we need to think about beyond the first 3 owners. And we just need to think about, how it's going to be maintained.
I 100% agree. Kaloa, part of the value of this property is the gardens. People are going to have to pay to want this. Like there's a value to it. These plants, all of these things that you see here, there's a value to it. And there's a market out there that wants this. And I'm not going to be able to sell a home to somebody that doesn't want this. But I already know that there's a market that does want it. And that's who I want to sell the home to.
And I can appreciate that. But in 10 years,
the value is even going to be more because those plants will be mature.
Mm-hmm. Assuming you're still there and no one cut them down, that's fine.
Do you feel the fence?
I would rather not do it. Okay. I would like the homeowners to be able to make that decision, but I'm open to to work with you.
I'll add a comment about the fences. So obviously there's swimming pools proposed, and so each time if a homeowner opts in to have a swimming pool established, they will have to put in a barrier fence surrounding the pool, and they can work with the landscape to make it so that it's not a standard chain link fence around the pool. They can make it a nice,
post and wire
that goes from the house outward and then circumvents a lot of the property and then back to the house. So it doesn't necessarily have to surround the pool. They can make it work with the yard if they go for swimming pools.
Right. Yeah, I was told by the sanitarian, if somebody, you should put it on the plan now because it would be easier to it's so hard to get it approved later.
Oh, that's fine. But the fence design, which isn't on the plan, could easily be made one that surrounds the pool, but it also protects the yard. It doesn't necessarily have to surround the pool by like 20 feet. So there's a way to work the fence in with a swimming pool.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I agree.
Okay, so I don't want to, we've got another application after this at least. So we can have some more discussion, but I want to check in with the agency members. Other things that we had talked about and that to some extent were addressed tonight were the wall. And it sounds like you've made that consistent with health code. And I do think last time there was some question about the tree wells. They are pretty substantial for some of the trees. And I think the other thing that got brought up, particularly for lot 3, was the grading. I think we talked about that a little bit last time as well, that there's a lot of grading taking place and a pretty big retaining wall next to that wetland. And I'm just flagging this if agency members have any questions, concerns, while we have the applicant here before we do any action. Or not.
No questions.
Okay, Aaron, I guess there's a couple questions, but one is about this idea of a conservation easement and for the buffer between the 40-50 foot buffer between the lawn area and the wetland, as I understand it. What would that, is that just, do we just call it a conservation easement, or is there some legal issue associated with that? Does there need to be?
I think that depends on how the applicant would like to propose that. If you're looking for something in perpetuity to establish that 50-foot upland buffer, then yes, you can do it as a conservation easement. It would essentially just be delineated on the plan and marked in the field. There can be language as far as the specific activities that can occur within the conservation easement area. It's essentially what the way it's being proposed now is it's called a wetland buffer area, which is I guess a less formal.
So our
saying that.
I'm sorry, Aaron. Our sign would call it an ecology buffer, which is I guess it's a technical term for.
Yeah.
Chris, can you explain it a little bit more?
No, I mean, she's spitting it into a legal framework, and ours is a narrative framework.
Yeah. Sorry, Aaron. I'm sorry to cut you off.
Thank you. That's so yes, if the agency would like a conservation easement to protect those areas from future disturbance, you can request that a 50-foot conservation easement be placed, just a protected easement area. To go along these lines as far as the maintenance of the stormwater swales, I know that is a concern of yours, Kealoha, that you had raised. One option would be to have an inspection and maintenance chart prepared by the design engineer for these swales, and indicating inspection, management, and maintenance frequency required for the swales. And that detail can be provided to your agent, so that is part of the record of the permits for future homeowners should they come and look through their original approvals, and that would run with the with this particular development plan. I had one question as far as how this would work when the properties sell. How are you ensuring that the developer's landscaper be on, what is your mechanism for allowing those continued inspections on property after it sells? You know, it's one thing if it's a multifamily development or rental units where you have a managing company, but as this is a subdivision and these individual lots will sell and there's no homeowners association, what is your legal mechanism for that continued inspection and maintenance on those wetland, on those buffers? Have you thought that through?
Chris, do you want to speak to that?
So Mike, I think she's asking for legal mechanism. What our intention was, which is in writing to you, is that I would go and meet with them, interpret the landscape once they buy it, and then every summer, so they get installed, probably 6 months to a year, the place sells. They then get introduced to it. Then for 2 years after that, during the summertime, I would go and inspect with the homeowners and then write a report. And if, and our recommendations was that if the town wanted to come and look at it with us, that would be welcome. But we can write a report, take some pictures, send them along to you so that you have a ability to review that.
And then I also put in this Wildwood Ave 40 to 50 foot wetland buffer garden management plan, that if it's deemed that the maintenance is not done, a bond will be issued for the maintenance that you can collect on, to reassure the committee that the work will be done, the maintenance will be done.
So you're looking to post a bond for the wetland buffer plantings? I'm just confused. After a subdivision, you have an individual or somebody who's coming to purchase a property. Once the CO is granted, issued, and the property transfers, where are the rights to return to that property for reinspection? There has to be some type of this needs to be ironed out with your
right. So it's attorney. If we go, could we go to the Wildwood Ave 40 foot to 50 foot wetland buffer garden management plan? So apparent bullet point 2, the owners of lot 1, 2, and 3 agree to have alfresco landscape design, Chris, and Madison's inland wetland officer perform an annual site visit. Alfresco.
So is this, excuse me, Mike, is this something you're looking to put in your deeds?
Yes.
But this is 2 years. You only have it's throughout that document. It just says for 2 years. That I think well, it's what happens after that for the next owners.
So, well, there'll be a management plan of right. So the garden should be maintained by each individual owner. The bioswales they'll be documented that this is their stormwater runoff. And in a description on the plaque, right, of how they maintain the bioswales. Now, if you want to make it a condition that we have to include the maintenance plan of the bioswales in the deed or the garden in the deed, we could do that.
I have a question, if I could butt in here for a second. What happens if 5 years from now it's not being done? Obviously, there's going to be a lot of angst over, your side, because you're obviously committed and passionate about getting this to work. But what's the enforcement mechanism of the town or the Inland Wetlands Association?
It would be just as any other approval has occurred through the agency. There's an approved plan. And typically it would be something that would be brought to our attention or in some manner or another, that if
Yeah,
the
but this has been,
conditions on the site
this has been
change.
adhered to. This management plan has been adhered to, like Joe was saying, 2-3 years, and it's done.
And if it's
Well-
not maintained, I think that's what KLO's concern is. And it happens and
I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but I see a lot of lawsuits in my days, and I don't see any power by the town to enforce this once 2 or 3 years goes by.
If I could jump in here, I guess I'm confused because you just had an application before us where somebody was putting some meadow grass in and some shade trees. But it's the same thing with the shade trees that get planted there. What enforcement do you have on the application that was just before us that the shade trees don't take, or if the no low meadow flowering meadow grass doesn't take? This is
really every single application that's going to come before you. I mean,
for you. This is
So,
no different than any other.
excuse me. I think, this is going on. This is not anything new. We have discussed this a lot. Part of what we're talking about is that you are integrating your stormwater management plan into plantings. That's a huge difference, right? From some of our other applications. I would prefer that we just keep it to this application. Each application has its own challenges. You guys are proposing 3 houses within much of which is within the regulated activity. And you're proposing a very idealistic planting plan to manage stormwater. So I think all we're trying to do is figure out how to keep that in not perpetuity, because that's ridiculous. That's not going to happen, but at least through the next several owners of these properties. That's our responsibility. And that's
I understand, Kala. I completely understand, and I apologize if you took it the wrong way.
Well, I think I don't want to talk about, we are talking about your application. So bringing in other applications, we're just going to go down a rabbit hole there. And
Yeah, no, you're right.
So let's figure out what we can do. And I think what you heard from the agency is that there is concern about these maintenance plans and how to maintain the system. And if it, having it on the deed is one of the few ways that gives us in the town a way to make sure that your vision is fulfilled, because otherwise
100%
you're
agree
at
with
the mercy of people.
I
and
agree with you,
people
Kala.
are not.
I think we should put it on the deed. I think it makes sense to put it on the deed.
I agree. That's the intent.
It is the intent.
Yeah.
And thank you, because it does help keep that system in place for however long, for indefinitely.
Well, we'll see.
It helps to keep it.
Right. And that is, so what we're trying to do is use all the tools that we have to ensure that, our job is to protect the wetlands and these are the tools we have outside of just saying no, right? I mean,
yeah, thank you
outside of just saying
for
no.
doing it.
Yeah, thank you, Chloe. I would suggest that we put that on, have it as a condition that we include it on the deed. It's a very simple maintenance plan. I mean, all we need to do is keep it clear of debris. That's it.
And we can talk about, Joe had brought up, I mean, I know you don't want fences, but at the very least, there needs to be more than 11 signs delineating where things are.
What would you propose?
So I don't want to, other agency members can talk as well.
John had suggested before, when we had met, and I'm sorry for not taking you up on the suggestion. Signs are a big thing in the landscape industry. He had suggested every 50 feet. And I think that we have it basically every 100 feet. I mean, the way that we looked at it is, we've got this big plaque, tells you what the garden is. And then, every homeowner is going to really understand it. But if we need to put that every 50 feet, that's
You don't need to
fine.
have a giant plaque every 50 feet. What we have in other places
No.
where we've done are the smaller ones. And
Yeah,
and-
no.
and they're-
Just a 4-inch round plaque. And we would change the language to have it read conservation easement. Or,
wetland buffer, whatever.
yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to think about exactly what to say right now.
It would come out to the 50-foot now.
So
50 feet is standard.
So
I think.
can I ask you guys for a favor? I just and just say no if you're fine with it, but could we put that sign on the back of the garden at the 40-foot mark? So it clearly shows that you can manage this 10-foot garden, but you cannot pass that 40-foot delineation from the wetlands. So that's the true conservation easement there. The ecology buffer is between 50 and 40, and then the conservation easement would be between 50 and then 40 in the wetlands. And then so there's two different functions essentially.
Martin.
Yeah, hi, I'm back. Sorry about that. A drone flew into my antenna. Not really. So I think that the landscaping, is a nice enhancement to the wetlands, is a nice buffer to the wetlands. And certainly those, vegetated swales are nicely planted as well. And my feeling is that all that should be included in the conservation easement. Because I think it's sort of part and parcel. I think it gives us some assurances that vegetation will remain and be respected, especially if it's posted with signs. And as far as the swales themselves goes, I mean, they are, I think they're well designed. I like the pea stone. I think that the way that they're graded and the materials you guys are using are going to ensure that they're going to work for a long period of time. And they're going to be very self-evident. The other thing is, most of the water that's going through them isn't going off of some paved parking area, right? This is mostly clean water going through here. We're not really worried about trapping road sand in these things. It's really more about erosion control and maybe some biofiltration, before it gets down into the wetlands. We have a narrow shared driveway. There's not a lot of surface area where cars are running over, and certainly the roadway itself is relatively level, and I think drains more away from the houses. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. So
that's correct. Yes, that's correct.
So those swales are really to capture, the changes in grade between those lots. Is low swale because of the fill areas, and the changes in grade bring, those property lines together in sort of a dip, and that's how we're managing the runoff basically from the yard. So I feel comfortable with the design, and I'd feel a lot more comfortable with everything if we were able to preserve those really nice plantings and those bioswales in a conservation easement.
We can do that.
Yeah. So what does that all mean? Just to clarify the conservation easement, where in what does that say? Do we need to come up with the language now? Could we make it a condition of approval? Something that me and John and Chris discuss.
Yeah, those signs, sometimes when they just say conservation easement, it's not enough.
Yeah.
They should say, no clearing, perhaps, Certainly not no trespassing, because, you know, as James said, you know, people can go in there and enjoy it. But it's no cutting, no clearing.
Chris, do you have any suggestions?
I'm thinking more about what the legal, what they've used previously in town on these.
Yeah, we can give you some draft language for that area if you'd like, you know, as a condition, if that 50-foot conservation easement is a desire of the commission, then we can provide you with some draft language that could go and be incorporated into the deeds.
I thought
It
you
would-
referenced like some rights and requirements, or you know, that there was a number of things that go along with that, which is, you know, I think the wise thing to do.
Yeah. We can do that. And that can be managed. This is, keep in mind that these lots are, lot lines have been shifted and will be going through a process with the Planning and Zoning Commission. So this deed language can be ironed out prior to the filing of the Mylar on the land record. So we can have all of that language cleaned up ahead of time.
Thank you.
Again, I apologize for getting offline, but we were taking a look at lot 3 when I lost contact with Earth. I'm sorry I did, and I was just wondering if I couldn't recall if there was a planting scheme above that retaining wall or not.
No.
Not so. When the homeowners are in, we will either have to fence the top of that wall or plant the top of the wall.
Because it's so high?
Probably both.
Yeah. The building department might require a fence, right? I mean,
right. Exactly.
Yeah, they will. Anything over 4 feet, the building department requires a fence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those walls will be stepped back slightly,
yeah,
but it's still a best practice.
Right. And so why didn't you add your wonderful landscaping plan along that top of that wall?
Because it wasn't in the buffer. I was sticking specifically into that 10-foot area.
Okay.
But I'm happy we can put plants there, but I think it's once constructed and once we figure out what if screening's the purpose or if it's beauty or view for the client, you know, may change on what that looks like.
Right.
What I intended to do was have an allowance for the home and for an additional garden around the house and then around that wall, and they can work directly with Chris on plantings of what they, you know, come. You know, it's just a nice feature to offer to a buyer.
I'm just wondering, how far is that wall from the wetland line?
You could zoom in on it.
The bottom of the wall is Nick, if you could zoom in for us so I can take a look. So it's at the bottom of the wall, so you can see the oops. Yeah, you can see that those two lines there are the 40-foot and 50-foot buffer lines there.
I see. Oh, it's just above that. That's what you were saying, Chris. That's why you didn't.
So it's not in the. You know, what I did is try to do this planting buffer around what we want to help people protect the wetlands.
Sure.
And some of those areas that actually came in much more than the 40 feet.
Sure. And there's a heck of a slope there too. That's why you're putting the wall up, and that's, I assume, forested buffer at this point.
Yeah, we're trying to save as many trees in that stretch as possible.
Does it might crowd, it might crowd the house site a little bit, or it's a tight site, right? And so you're trying to maximize their lawn area.
Right.
I just for consistency's sake, I was thinking, oh geez, I didn't see plantings above that area where the wall drops down.
Yeah, they will have allowances, for, plantings around the house and then around the walls and just anything outside of that buffer. And then even if they want to add onto the plantings on the buffer in between the properties.
And the same goes for the other side of the house. Can you scoot down? Right in there. That's it. So there's another wall there. And that's fairly new. That's what I was thinking of, actually, that location. And again, that's.
Yeah, that wall location is between the 40-foot and the 50-foot offsets to the wetlands.
And there's no plantings that are scheduled there. It's tight to the house.
It's because the wall is in there, and it just becomes a little tougher. I imagine the homeowner is going to want some screening right in that area from the pool, the neighbor's view. And that's why I think we'll have a fence with a screen.
Right.
Just above the wall.
Yeah, and hopefully when they back out of the garage, they don't go over the wall.
It's the other
it goes the other way. Yeah, it goes the other way.
44.
How are those slopes stabilized if they're not part of that buffer planting?
Well, those are
What are you
2-to-1 slopes.
proposing?
So
Lawn?
they're 2-to-1 slopes so that they can be some of them will be vegetated, some of them will be armored with some of the natural stone that's on the site.
They are planted if there's not a wall there. So that grading is all planted if you go back to the landscape plan.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yep. The slopes themselves, but where there are walls, if you so you see just to the right, there's a substantial amount of plantings right there. Yep, right next to the pool. And then it's above the wall. And then even below the wall, there's a little bit of plantings I can see right now. I did put a few just below that steep wall there because I think there's 3 feet that we can get some plantings in there, which will probably be like winterberry, serviceberry, anything that's more upright.
Sure.
Yeah.
I just a thought, but there's nothing wrong with filling in below the wall if it's thin down there or.
Yeah, so I do have plantings down there. I just can't see what they are.
Oh, okay.
A little bit. I can tell you. Yeah, winterberry, and then Mount Laurel where the walls slope down.
Okay.
And
oh, I see.
Yep. So it's all there.
Okay, that's great.
Thinking about people going over the walls. Yep.
Sure. It's nice. Thank you. So I'm sorry, we're back on the conservation easement. I apologize.
So Aaron, I guess I have a question. So we have language that we need for a conservation easement. We want to include some language on the stormwater swale maintenance that's going to be tagged to these lots. Are there other, and anybody else from the agency can chip in? I'm just trying to think of the issues that have come up that might be conditions we put on a motion. And I guess my other question, Aaron, would be, it sounds like some of this language we're going to want to get right. So I don't know, do we do a motion, where we're at on acting.
Sure. So I've taken some notes here on what I took to be what the agency is looking for. And I think to reflect kind of some of Martin's wording, put it together that the wetland, that the wetland buffer plantings and bioswales be incorporated into a 50-foot conservation easement, that the revised lot line revision map shall be updated to reflect this area. The individual deeds shall also reflect this easement area. You had some language that a landscape professional shall monitor the bioswales and wetland buffer plantings for 2 years from the date of installation and provide report annually to the agency's agent. That was one that was proposed. Another, as far as stormwater swales, a condensed inspection or maintenance chart can be prepared by the design, shall be prepared by the design engineer, identifying the inspection, management and maintenance frequency required for the drainage swales. This chart can be submitted to the agency's agent for review, and can be also incorporated as part of the deed for the individual properties. And that information can also be submitted prior to the filing of the Mylar and the deeds for the property. One question that I had someone had, well, I think it was the applicant had brought up the idea of a bond. The agency does have the ability to require that the applicant post erosion sedimentation control bond prior to any site disturbance. That's something that the agency should consider, given the extent of site work on each property. And those could be done for each individual property. Typically, how that would be done is the cost of the materials and the installation, and you can include a 10% contingency on that. That's all I had.
Unless you want to just, right.
Yeah. Any, so for the agency members, any questions or comments on what Aaron kind of just summarized?
I'm concerned about the gravel driveway. If you have a winter with a lot of snow, the plow is going to destroy that driveway, and applicants are going to want to have it paved. What's to prevent them from having it paved? Would they need a permit to pave it? John DeLauro could probably answer that.
No, there would not be a zoning permit or a engineering permit. No, they wouldn't need a permit, and they could pave it right up to the property line, actually.
Yeah, I think we have to have language that would prevent them from paving that driveway.
Okay, Martin, you had a comment, or did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was just, I want to, that's a shared driveway, right? I mean, so how does that work? I wonder, there's not an association that takes care of that, or the homeowners are going to have to plow it themselves and decide who's going to do it, or is there a plan for that?
There's a cross easement on each property. So at the time of subdivision, there were easements established for the driveway and the maintenance of the wetland buffer along the driveway, as well as cross easements on the stormwater
I see.
swales.
Okay, I got you.
So
Thank you.
that is included in the record subdivision map, and that language would also be included in the deeds.
Okay.
The shared responsibility. But no, there was no requirement for the establishment of a homeowner's association.
Okay.
Would it be would it be permissible to specify that the driveway has to remain as a permeable driveway? They can do permeable pavers. I'm not sold on permeable pavement yet, but permeable pavers might be an option, and then they weigh the cost versus the gravel and the aesthetics of it. Would that be acceptable? And that we put that into the,
Yes, it would.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, me too.
Is it possible to put that language into some kind of a easement or on the deed somehow? Is that,
You can.
or do we just say it
It'll be a condition of.
of
this-
approval?
Yeah.
But going forward, again,
Hmm.
what's to say that it might not be paved in the future?
Yeah, that could be deed restriction.
Deed restriction.
Sure.
I think if anybody wanted to pave the driveway in the future, that would require a return to the agency for permits.
Mhm.
I would
Yeah.
think so. So, okay. So a deed restriction there. So going back to Aaron, thank you for taking such great notes. I only picked up 3. I thought there were 4 things. 1, the conservation easement, 2, the monitoring plan, 3, the bond. Was there a 4th thing?
Conservation, monitoring, the maintenance for the bioswales,
Yeah.
Where did we want to put that? Was that going to go on the land records as well somehow, the maintenance schedule, or is it just going to be part of the approved plans?
Sure, there will already be a requirement for the stormwater easement areas, and that can also, you can condition that the maintenance of this stormwater system be an addendum to that deed. So there's a reference of.
Okay,
It will also be as part of the application as well,
okay.
application materials.
Can I take a stab at making a motion?
Yes, I just wanted to let our applicants know that when the agency is in the middle of a motion, that they're not supposed to be communicating with the applicant.
Okay. And we can discuss after we start putting the motion together, right? So,
The agency,
make a
not
motion.
with the applicant.
Right,
Yeah.
make a motion, we'll second, the agency can discuss, and then we can vote.
okay. All right, I'd like to make a motion that now are we applying this to all 3 lots?
Yeah.
A motion that, one single motion that, okay. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the application before us with the following conditions.
that would be 3 applications altogether.
Yes. Right, Aaron? Yeah.
Yes, there are 3 separate applications.
Okay. With several conditions, including the establishment of a conservation easement that is posted on the land records that consists of markings in the field spaced 50 feet apart with language to be agreed on with the town. That includes the area 50 feet from the wetlands and including the bioswales and the proposed landscape improvements that are for that buffer area between the 40 and 50-foot zone. I think that's good enough. Also, someone had mentioned a 2-year maintenance plan. I'm proposing a 3-year plan because I think that's a standard approach, that there will be annual reports to the town's representative who'll report back to us that every year reporting back on how the plants are doing and the number of plants that perhaps have not made it and what efforts have been made to replace those plants, and that the goal would be at the end of the 3-year period that we have some table or chart that shows that all the plants that were shown on the plans have made it and have survived. And also that the maintenance schedule for the bioswales as provided for in the application are also reported on the land records. Thirdly, that a bond is posted for the site that is consistent with the cost of landscape installations. Is that what we discussed? I'm at a loss for proposing a fair bond amount, maybe a bond to be determined at a later time, or.
Well,
ENS control bond, is that what you're talking about, Mark?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's typically the cost of the cost of installation of the ENS controls, and up to a 10% contingency. So we typically
Okay.
do 10%.
Okay, what she said. Sorry. Yeah. Yes, erosion control bond. Thank you. And I think that if there's a way to include ensuring that the existing shared driveway shall remain unpaved on the land record somehow, that would be great. So I think that's 1, 2, 3, 4 things, including the unpaved driveway, plus the unpaved driveway.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, so is there discussion? I guess I have a quick question for Aaron. I think what Martin laid out in his motion pretty much follows a lot of the language that you had. So we can tidy it up and just make it proper.
Yes.
Because I think the intent of every, I think the actual language, given this is kind of complicated, can be worked out.
Yes.
Behind the scenes.
Yes.
Thank you.
I understand what you're looking for.
Okay, besides that, are there any other discussion? And it's not even midnight yet. We can discuss for a while.
Well, I had a quick question. Do we need to make the condition on the paving? Because wouldn't they have to come back to us anyways if they were within the 100 feet? And I think the road is, the driveway is within the 100 feet, is it not?
Yes, it's very much within.
So isn't that motion, part of the motion, a little redundant, or just to be misconstrued?
Maybe. I mean, I guess the language that some language you could use instead of not paving it would be, you could, ensure that it's permeable. Because it gives them the option, for permeable pavers. I agree. I don't think permeable pavement is there yet. Maybe soon, someday.
I think my only concern is what happens if somebody wanted to do concrete?
We're in the middle of a motion, Mike.
Oh, I'm so
This is
sorry.
not
I'm so sorry. Sorry.
Discussion.
So I get what you're saying, Bob. I think because, I think given, I think it's okay to be redundant. That's not going to hurt anything. So we can keep it as unpaved, permeable. I don't know.
Yeah, plus it's not the.
I think permeable, I understand. I could understand that because, we're trying to keep the nature of the driveway in a way that it can, have the water pass through.
Yeah.
To the ground underneath. So I'm happy with that. I just, to say can't. I don't know. I hate redundancy. I really do. But if the committee wants it, then that's fine.
Other comments? Joe, did you have more to say? Or
I was just gonna say, we pretty much only approve driveway locations. Otherwise, we'd have 50 million permits a year when people want to repave. So we're pretty much locationary, and if they pave it down the road, that's overseen by others.
Any other comments? Is everyone comfortable with what we have?
I think that, I think it's a great plan. I love the effort that was put into the landscaping. It's a great plant selection. And going for the green infrastructure thing is great. And, you know, I think that we took a really close look at this application because, you know, as Keloa said, there's a lot of activity in the regulated area. So we had to take a really good hard look at it, but I think you guys did a great job.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to compliment them on making all the changes that were brought up at the last meeting, and hopefully we all get to see the results someday.
Okay, but we still need to actually vote because we are still in the middle of the motion.
That was
So
my opinion.
that's okay. That's all good. But
Okay.
so all in favor of this motion as outlined with all the conditions, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed or abstaining? Okay. So you are approved with conditions as discussed for a while, and that will be put into some nice language. And we'll see what happens.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Yeah,
too.
and I hope it is a good model project. Love to see that.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. All right, but we're not done yet, guys.
No. No, we're not.
At least we don't have testimony coming up.
So our next application, 21-31, 35 Cottage Road. As people are allowed into the meeting, I'll just briefly recap. We've had this application started, I think, in 2021. We started this, and then we had the intervener, and then we had public hearings, and then we had some more public hearing. We kept the public hearing open, and then we closed the public hearing March 10th, and had some deliberation, and here we are to act on this. Oh, you're not bringing them over. Okay. Oh, right, because the hearing is closed and it's just us. Okay. All right. Okay, so let me regroup here. So hopefully, well, I gave a brief there. Are there any other comments, questions?
So
Aaron,
obviously,
oh, go ahead.
okay, I think Aaron was going to say something.
I just wanted to allow Bob and Martin to let the agency and everyone know whether or not they had an opportunity to review the materials. Bob, I know, was not at the February meeting, and Martin, you were not at any of them, so I'm not sure if you had an opportunity to go through that or not.
I have not.
Okay, so Bob, you had one to catch up on, so we just wanted to hear how you did.
In terms of the minutes from the last meeting?
Yes, were you able to familiarize yourself with the happenings of the last meeting in February, where the hearing had closed?
the hearing had closed, the one from February? Or the
Me,
one from March?
You're absolutely, excuse me. Yes, the last meeting. No, it
Yes,
was
no, I have
not
been able
February.
to,
It was
so I
March.
can- No, I have not been able to, so I'm gonna have to abstain.
Okay. So
Okay.
that leaves me, Joe, and John.
Right, and we need 4.
You do have a quorum here. You would need a majority of agency members to carry a vote.
Okay.
So it comes down to 3 of us?
No pressure.
Okay, so having heard that, so I want to thank Kealoha and John for being here for every single hour. Also to John DeLaura. We've heard a lot. So obviously the regulated activity is demolition of a building, construction of a large apartment building, landscape plan, which was quite extensive, septic system, 2 tanks, a pipe, a little bit of a leach field, and then there was the reserve system, which really is an activity. And as far as protecting the pond, which is our charge, I think pretty much the applicants did their best to preserve the pond, and the interveners did come in with their experts to try to thwart what was stated, and then the applicant did admit to there may have been mistakes on the original plans, but the November 29th set did correct everything that was brought up by Steve Trinkus. So we know that there's a berm planned around the north, east, and west of the pond. There's a stormwater wetland, which I've never heard of before, but this is definitely another way to protect the pond. The landscaping, I'll bring up a little bit more later, quite extensive, has various functions, which is only helpful to the pond. The stormwater from the building goes to an infiltrator. Then it goes to a hydrodynamic separator, which in the expert letters going back and forth was the gist of disagreement. But I don't remember actually the intervener's side saying where it was. Obviously, it's on the plan. It's on the opposite side of the building as the pond. But I don't remember them ever admitting before water gets to it, it goes to an infiltrator. And then between the separator and the pond, there's still a riprap swale and the stormwater wetland. So although their side said it doesn't take out any bad stuff from the water, it's just a secondary way to clean up the water, there's a lot of controls between the separator and the pond. So I wanted to just bring that out. That's in the record. A lot of talk about nitrates and septic systems. I think it's in the record somewhere that plants soak up nitrates. So it shouldn't be left to the commission to believe that nitrates are horrible when we know that there's a big landscaping plan that is designed to absorb the nitrates that were led us to believe that are bad for the pond. And then I am happy that that big pine tree stays because it's a beautiful tree. Other notes with regards to the Davison responses to the interveners, the stormwater treatment is enhanced with the use of the separator next to the building. We know that between it and the pond, there's other treatments. Mike Ott has said that there's a first flush that will not affect the tidal wetlands or the pond. And I guess, I don't know exactly where the tidal wetlands were, but that came up as a secondary wetland to this whole application, but not principally on the property. I think the only thing I was saddened by is that I think it was Clemens who says the salamanders breed somewhere else off the property, but they do wander toward this property, and the septic system is eliminating potential habitat for them. So I don't think we can just say if they could add a habitat somewhere up in that septic area, that would be a benefit to the potential approval. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought that sounded pretty dumb. So there was a charge that there wasn't enough pond sampling done. I don't know how much pond sampling you could do. You catch critters, identify them, and then you make a determination as to whether this activity is going to force them out. I don't believe that this activity is going to make any creatures leave the pond. I think I'm positive. I think the pond's going to be unaffected based on everything we've heard proposed. Planting plan will be better for birds. So we did hear the intervener say, this is going to be bad for migratory birds. They're not going to fly here. Well, most birds are 800 feet up. If they miss this pond, they don't have to worry. Hammonasset's just a few hundred yards away. But I still think this pond is going to call in the ducks. It's going to call in the herons. It's going to call in a bunch of other migratory birds, especially with the planting plan. I'm going to say it's going to attract more birds. And I think there was kind of if you really read the record, there was like a protectionist for all the creatures that live in the pond. But then there was this is bad for the birds. Well, they don't tell you, well, if it was good for the birds, they're going to eat the creatures that you're trying to protect. So I thought that was a funny argument. So I'm going to stop there, and I'm just going to say I like the plan, the way it was hammered out through the process, and I'm going to vote yes due to the fact that the
Whoa. But we don't have any motion yet.
I know. I'm just saying where I'm going.
Oh, okay.
So you're gonna know that I'm gonna vote yes, because I think they did their best to protect the watercourse. I'm not saying I'm voting and that's my reason. That's my build up to where I'm going.
Okay. Well, I guess, John, I'm gonna let you go in just a second. So I guess what I would say, I think I disagree with you a little bit, Joe. Not on everything. I think, and I brought this up numerous times throughout the public hearings. I think that the one thing that I find is, and this gets back to stormwater. So we're back to the stormwater, that planted, constructed wetland. And I think that they have a maintenance plan. I think we need to ensure that it's monitored and taken care of. I think, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you checked your email, but we had some suggestions for language on some conditions that we can think about. And I guess there's a lot of activity on a very small space. So it looks beautiful, as you say, on paper, but there's a lot of activity. So just as, we have with other applications, there's bonding that we can suggest for erosion and sedimentation controls. Especially, it's such a tight area that I think, ensuring that activity, some of the activity taking place there, that we're being on top of that, just as we have in other applications. I do think there needs to just be, this is a big project, so there needs to be oversight on the different stages that should be called out. And I think some of the language should include, making sure there's I wrote the erosion and sedimentation is being monitored perhaps by, an independent contractor and having a report to the agency. Back to the stormwater, the constructed stormwater wetland, it should be, before the site is signed off on, there should be an inspection that is working properly. There should be, and I'm not going to remember all of the details and what they have for monitoring, but I think there should be, as we do with a lot of these, we should have monitoring in place. And this goes for the wetland planning areas where, just as we did a couple times tonight, we're asking for people for a 3-year plan, and we're asking, to make sure plants are taken care of. And I think the other thing that came up is they have again, it's like we saw earlier, there's a no mow lawn area, and that should be clearly delineated. And I guess here we go with our fences again, but somehow, being really clear that I forget, I think it's on the western side, northwestern side. There's the no mow lawn, there's this upland buffer and the wetland vegetation, and there should be clear delineation for that as well. John, Matthew, did you have any comments?
I think pretty much what Joe said and what you said can be part of a motion.
Aaron, did you have, I know you've taken good notes throughout the process because there's a lot, and I'm trying to think if there's something between the two of us that we might have missed.
I think a lot of what you said, Kayla, in your portion here, I think staff did try to add some wording for potential conditions for that, and that information was sent to you for review and possible motions this evening. I would remind the agency that you, as part of this application, in your decision making, you will need to make findings regarding the environmental intervenor, as well as making a resolution regarding that intervention that was filed. So I would encourage you to discuss that further if you wish, or you could entertain a motion as well, as some of that information has been drafted by staff for you, so that you were ready for this evening.
So
Okay,
did
so I think,
you get a chance to look at that? At the potential, what Aaron had sent out that for us to look at as.
I may have missed that email. I'll put it up on my other laptop. I'll take a look. So was that sent out today?
Would you like me, let me see here.
Well, I can, I mean, I have it
I can have
pulled
it
up.
up in 2 seconds.
You can screen share that also if you want, Kayla, that's up to you. If you want to go through it.
Okay, I mean, I can. Would you, would that be useful? Is that something that would be useful to do? Joe, John?
Because I have it up on my other laptop. Oh, she says it's attached. I don't see an attachment.
All right, I'm gonna share my screen.
Okay.
Can you see that?
Oh, okay. I'm looking at an email where she tells Martin where to look for items. I'll go before
It's
that
here
one.
on your screen, Joe.
Ah, okay.
All right, so can you see this? Yes?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes, everybody can see that.
All right, so I think because, you know, we spent a lot of time on this and we have an intervener, we need to make sure that we are dotting our I's, crossing our T's. This is draft language that Aaron and John have helped us with to keep us on the straight and narrow. We've got the findings regarding the environmental intervener. We have a resolution. And then we can have findings regarding the regulated activity. And then I can scroll down and we can go through this, but there are different options with proper language for us to incorporate into a motion. And again, this is, you know, a lot of what we've already talked about, right? We've talked about bonding, we've talked about erosion and sedimentation controls. We've talked about, I'll scroll slowly. There was a lot of discussion about rainfall and how much runoff is going to happen. So it would be good to have this independent erosion and sedimentation control expert. So these are all options, but they follow along with a lot of the discussion that we had. And you know, in detail, much as we just did with the other application, where we're going to have clear language that it, you know, ensures that what we, if we are going to vote, you know, on approval, that with whatever conditions we decide, that we have clear recourse if things aren't done as they should be. I'll scroll down. So we talked about the wetland plantings. We talked about the no mow area that needs to be delineated. You know, all of this has come up in our discussion. I can leave. So I guess, Aaron, I guess what we need, do we need separate motions for let's see, findings regarding the environmental intervener?
My recommendation would be, if the agency was ready to make a motion, would be to read your facts and findings and resolutions into the record as a whole document.
Great. Okay, I will scroll through this again for Joe and John, unless you can pull it up and tell me. Well, okay, wait. So do we have to make a motion for me to read it in, or should I read it in those parts and then we get to a motion? Sorry, Aaron.
I think you can read it as one entire, yes, all together. You can read some facts, although the facts are relatively short compared to the rest of it. So I think it's probably just as easy to have, if there's an agency member who's ready to make a motion, to do so from the beginning.
Okay. So Joe and John, these, I'm happy to read this in. These resolutions regarding regulated activity would be part of our motion, which would be part of the motion which normally we would have as conditions, but as we're reading it all together, It would just be all done at once as a motion, and then we can, of course, discuss and amend. Does someone want, so if you entertain a motion, I can read all of this and then we can discuss if you'd like. Or I can scroll down more.
Okay, so does the initial motion have to identify that we had an intervener, or is that part of our
Joe,
conditional language?
If you are comfortable making a motion, my recommendation would be to start on page 1 and read through the entire document.
Oh, and just read through
the
the
record.
whole- Oh,
Yes.
okay.
And then then it can be seconded and you can discuss it further.
Joe, I'm happy to do it if you want, since I have it.
Well, I have it up in front of me.
Okay.
So obviously I know how to make a motion to go either one way or another based on an address and what the activity is, but then we have to go right into the facts as written.
I think, go ahead, Erin.
Yes, as part of this resolution, you should have a facts and findings
Okay.
of the agency.
And
I know a lot rides
And
on this.
resolutions are, yes, as well.
Okay. So after all the meetings and hearings, at this time, I'd like to make a motion to approve application 21-31, an application for a regulated activity at 35 Cottage Road, map 31, lot 5, with the owner applicant being 35 Cottage Road LLC, a regulated activity permit to construct a multifamily residential development and associated site improvements within 100 feet of a wetland. So that's my motion. And then to accompany this motion with facts and findings as written and to be read into the record. And now I'll read. Kialoha.
I'm happy. I can read for you if you'd like.
So, okay, so the Madison Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Agency, we received this regulated activity application 21-31 for 35 Cottage Road to redevelop the property as a multifamily development with associated improvements within the wetland review area as defined in the regulations. So a public hearing commenced on December 6th, 2021 via the Zoom platform. On this date, an environmental intervention was filed with the agency in accordance with Connecticut General Statutes 20A-19 by attorney William Bilczek on behalf of Seabreeze Condominiums Association, Inc. and Robert Marzatelli. So the hearing of December 6th, 2021 was continued to January 6th, 2022. Upon receiving extensions by the applicant, the hearing was further continued to February 7th, 2022, and again to March 7th, 2022. Upon closing the hearing on March 7th, 2022, the agency began deliberations. The SEPA intervention claims the proposed activities will have or is reasonably likely to have the effect or unreasonably polluting, impairing, or destroying the public trust in air, water, or other natural resources of the state. More specifically, the claims cited a lack of baseline data regarding the site's regulated resources, lack of analysis of potential short and long-term impacts to the resources from sedimentation and erosion, stormwater runoff, and septic system leachate, a lack of analysis of potential effects of the proposed development upon vernal pool ablicate species, a likelihood that there is a reasonable likelihood of an adverse physical impact and degradation of the pond's water quality from inadequately treated runoff, a likelihood of an adverse physical impact and degradation of the pond's water quality from inadequately treated septic system leachate, and a reasonable likelihood of the elimination of the spotted salamander breeding population as a result of both the physical degradation of the breeding pond's water quality and the elimination of adjacent suitable upland habitat utilized by the spotted salamander. The agency finds that Seabreeze Condominium Associates, Inc. and Robert Marzatelli have alleged the above facts and are considered a party of these proceedings. The agency finds that the facts alleged are not supported by substantial evidence in the record. Furthermore, the agency does not find unreasonable conduct associated with their proposed regulated activity, or that the proposed activity includes conduct which has, or which is reasonably likely to have, the effect of unreasonably polluting, impairing, or destroying the public trust in the air, water, or other natural resources of the state. I'm going to hand it off to Kealoha.
Okay. Findings regarding the regulated activity. The applicant provided the detailed presentation of initially submitted plans on the record at the December 6, 2021 meeting. Attorney William Bilczek presented a verified petition for intervention under CGS 22A-19 during this meeting. The intervention includes representations and also 6 findings made by professional wetland scientists, registered soil scientists, certified senior ecologist, and wildlife biologist George Logan of REMA Ecological Services, LLC. Mr. George Logan presented these findings at the hearing on January 2nd, 2022. Additionally, Mr. Stephen Trinkus, PE, provided a report on behalf of the SEPA intervener. In response to this information and comments by the agency, the applicant provided additional documentation and revisions at the meeting of March 6th. Is that right? It's March 7th. This included responses from the applicant's design professionals.
March 7th.
Yeah, it's March 7th. As well as testimony from Mr. Mark Lancourt, PE, with respect to the subsurface sewage disposal system, and Dr. Michael Clemens with respect to pre and post-development wetlands and watercourses analyses. On March 7th, 2022, both Mr. George Logan and Mr. Stephen Trinkus, PE, submitted additional testimony into the record in the form of reports. The Madison Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Agency has considered the application, supporting materials, and all documents and testimony entered into the record. The agency understands that their decision must be a determination supported by substantial evidence. Pre- and post-development wetland and watercourse analysis reports from both Eric Davison and Michael Clemens have, in our opinion, adequately depicted the existing conditions of the pond and how the installation of native plantings and a stormwater management system, including a constructed stormwater wetland, can improve the habitat and maintain water quality. Michael Ott, PE, design engineer, in a stormwater report and presentation, additionally explained how the stormwater treatment train of both primary and secondary treatment systems will minimize any stormwater impacts and protect the inland wetlands and watercourses on site. Lastly, the intervener's professional wetland scientist, Mr. George Logan, as well as professional engineer, Mr. Stephen Trinkus, both recommended the applicant utilize the nitrogen dilution model found in CT Deep 2006 guidance for design of large-scale on-site wastewater renovation systems. Mr. Mark Lancourt, PE, provided testimony regarding this process and his analysis of site characteristics. Additionally, calculations were provided to the agency representing the analysis suggested and specified in the above referenced guidance materials. So, resolutions regarding the regulated activity to be essentially our conditions. The Madison Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Agency authorizes the regulated activity with the following conditions of approval to minimize impacts associated with the proposed regulated activity and protect the inland wetlands and watercourses on this site. 1, the Inland Wetland Agency's agent shall be notified at least 48 hours prior to commencement of any regulated activity. 2, a financial guarantee for erosion and sedimentation controls shall be submitted prior to commencement of any regulated activity in accordance with Section 14 of the Madison Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Regulations in an amount based upon the cost of materials and installation of said controls as shown on the approved plan plus 10% contingency. 3, at all times during site work and until soil areas are stabilized, the applicant shall install and maintain erosion and sediment control measures such as fabric filter fence, staked hay bales, or other measures deemed necessary by the agency's agent to prevent erosion and sedimentation impacts to the wetlands and watercourses. 4, erosion control and soil stabilization measures shall comply with the improved plan and the guidelines as established in the Connecticut Guidelines for Soil Erosion and Sediment Control, 2002. 5, an independent erosion and sedimentation control expert shall be retained by the applicant to monitor controls on site and conduct inspections at least once a week and within 24 hours of the end of a storm event with a rainfall amount of 1 inch or greater. A report shall be submitted to the agency's agent within 2 business days after each inspection. The report shall provide the following information: date of inspection, amount of rainfall, report of any problems, list of action items, and resolution of action items. The applicant shall provide the name and contact information of this expert to the agency's agent. 6, the subsurface detention system and constructed stormwater wetland shall be inspected by the design engineer during construction to verify consistency with the approved plans. 7, an as-built survey of the stormwater system component shall be submitted to the agency with written verification from a CT licensed engineer that the system was constructed in accordance with the approved design plans. This submittal shall be completed prior to the applicant's request for a certificate of occupancy. 8, the constructed stormwater wetland shall be completed and stabilized prior to receiving site stormwater runoff. 9, a condensed inspection and maintenance chart shall be prepared by the design engineer, identifying the inspection, management, and maintenance frequency required for each component of the stormwater treatment system. This chart shall be submitted to the agency's agent for review prior to the applicant's request for a certificate of occupancy. 10, the construction of the stormwater wetland and the installation of all wetland plantings shall be monitored by a certified professional wetland scientist. 11, the no-mow area shall be permanently delineated from the maintained lawn area on site with signage. 12, the wetland planting areas shall be monitored by a certified professional wetland scientist for a period of 3 years after installation to ensure viability. Areas with more than a 10% mortality of plants within the 3 years shall be replanted. The wetland scientist shall provide a report biannually to the agency's agent concerning the health of the plantings. 13, a landscape maintenance plan shall be prepared by the design landscape architect for the various planted areas, including the manicured lawn, no-mow lawn, upland buffer shrubs and trees, and wetland vegetation. This plan shall be submitted to the agency's agent for review prior to the applicant's request for a certificate of occupancy. All work and all regulated activities conducted pursuant to this authorization shall be consistent with the terms and conditions of this permit. Any structures, excavation, deposition of fill, obstructions of flow, encroachments, or other regulated activities not specifically identified and authorized herein shall constitute a violation of this permit and may result in permit modification, suspension, or revocation. In the event that any additional wetland or watercourse regulated activities are required as a result of other agency permitting to support the proposed activity, the Madison Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Agency reserves the right to reconsider the proposed regulated activity and may require modifications to minimize the impact to wetland resources. This permit shall be valid for a period of 5 years. Permit extensions may be authorized in accordance with CT General Statutes 22A-36 through 22A-45 inclusive. The Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Agency renders this decision in accordance with the Madison Inland Wetlands and Watercourses regulations based on the following considerations. A, no direct impacts to the wetlands or watercourses are proposed and potential indirect impacts have been mitigated through the stormwater treatment system. B, the applicant has adopted alternatives into the design to enhance the quality of the inland wetlands and watercourse on site. And C, through the proposed landscape plan, the applicant has established a native vegetated buffer to protect inland wetland resources from direct and indirect impacts associated with adjacent land development. So that, in effect, is our motion with 13 conditions outlined. I will, so, but maybe John, you could second our motion and we can discuss. We're all
I will
still,
motion.
okay, so we have our motion, which we're not going to read again, and we have our second. So for the three of us who are voting,
Kayla, as the entire agency is here, the entire agency can vote. I would assume that they would vote appropriately if they were not involved in the in all of the deliberations. So it's not just a 3-person vote, it's the entire.
right,
And it's the majority.
yes,
Just
the
to
majority.
clarify.
Yes.
And another clarification, as you were reading, I did notice, and you caught a typo, but our January meeting date, there is a typo in this resolution, and that should, right where you are here, January 6th should read January 10th.
Okay.
And then lower on that page under the findings regarding it says January 2nd, which should also say January 10th, and the
Okay.
March 6th should read March 7th. I apologize for that.
Okay. All right, so we have our motion, we have a second, we will correct the typos to the correct dates. Anybody have any comments or anything?
I just want to say that that was a really nicely done motion. That was a lot of work, and thank you.
Yes, thank you for the help, Aaron.
Yeah, that was a well-done motion, Aaron, on your behalf.
But I think I will just say, I think it captured a lot of our discussion over the last several months.
So,
months.
so after all that was, did I miss, was there a condition to measure at the outfall where the stone, where the riprap pad is, to try to do an annual water test there?
Which rip?
So
one in the
the drainage goes right to the pond, and it comes out at a riprap swale area. And I thought it might be best for an annual water test, since there was so much concern about the separator. So maybe we can annually get a water analysis from the applicant side. If we're gonna get reports from them on the on other items, maybe an annual monitoring to just show that the water quality is not deteriorating as it gets to the pond. Kind of like a MS4 outfall water test, but this is more for pond protection for this project.
And okay, so do we have to specify exactly what they need to test for?
So I guess my condition would just to add that an annual monitoring of stormwater shall take place at the outfall of the storm drain at the riprap swale to determine that the stormwater quality is appropriate and not degrading over time.
Okay, so Aaron, is that clear enough language? Well, this is, we have,
Not as clear as I'd like. So what specific, are you specifically looking for?
A stormwater quality management plan to annually measure that outflow area. So if the pollutant level rises, the property owner can react and make corrections.
Is this for a designated period of time? The monitoring of the wetland plantings was for 3 years. We can't hear you, Joe. You're muted.
Oh, I'm sorry. So the outflow is directly from the building, has nothing to do with the plants. So it's a direct drainage of water through an infiltrator, then that hydrodynamic separator. Then it goes around the building and does a straight downhill shot to a riprap swale. And then it crosses the stormwater wetland. So I thought annual monitoring of the water coming out of the pipe there should be done to ensure that the stormwater what's coming from the separator isn't degrading over time. And if they see pollutant levels going up, they can make corrections up at the separator. Because that was a big point for the interveners. They kept focusing on that separator for a while. I don't think we should ignore it, but I think if they did annual test, usually, especially after a big rainfall, they could catch some water at the outflow and have results within a day or so.
And again, Joe, was that for a specific amount of time that you were looking to have that?
I didn't cap it, so I was thinking, I guess we could do for a 5-year period. Yeah, I'll go 5-year period. Then they'll get the message to hopefully keep doing it, but mandatory for 5 years. I think we've done something similar in the past to other applicants.
Yeah, well, we've done different motions, but our usually monitoring is, depends, 3 to 5 years is, I think, depending on what we're interested in. Okay, and are you okay if Aaron makes that into pretty language to match
Yes.
the rest of our beautiful motion? And obviously, there's been a lot of interest in this application. So, we want to do our best to make it, clear what we're asking for, and, it's contingent on the approval. All right, so anybody else like to comment on this application, on this motion? Hearing a big no. Aaron, is there anything else that we need to do before we vote, since we want to be all clear?
No, I don't have anything else. Thank you.
All right. Well, we have our motion. We have addition to the motion. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstaining?
That's me.
Okay, got a couple
Yeah.
abstentions. So we have Martin Brogy and Bob Sedon abstaining. So we have a majority in favor. All right. And that's great, but we're still not done with our evening, people. There's more, but wait, there's more.
If you call now, there's more.
Oh, all right, we do have an application for receipt 22-17, 81 Yankee Peddler Path. It's an application, a regulated activity permit to stabilize existing foundation piers and degrading slope within 100 feet of wetland. I looked at this and at least the pictures, it wasn't, I think the site plan wasn't maybe as clear as it could be. John, do you have any comments on this?
Yeah. Well, yeah, first of all, I think this is one that I think I'd recommend a site walk.
That's what I was wondering. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's imperative, actually. One of the things that I noticed on the application is that there was no design engineer.
Right.
There's no professional design engineer giving us any information as to how this is going to be remediated, how he's going to, mitigate the erosion that has already occurred. And based on the application, the applicant admits to 80 cubic yards of material. This came in as a section 4 submittal, and I chose, and I have the authority to do that. I chose that I was not going to look at this as an administrative approval, but thought that the agency really needed to look at this in detail. So my comments are site walk, design, professional engineer to put a plan together that shows exactly what we're going to be looking at for mitigating that erosion.
Okay. Yeah, I had, looking through it, I agree that a site walk and the plan definitely needs to be upgraded. Any other comment? I mean, does anybody else disagree? Are you guys? So this application is received because it's received automatically. But yes, if we could schedule a site walk, that would be great.
Okay, we'll do that.
I just wanted to add that maybe they, in addition to an engineer, they bring in a soil scientist to confirm the wetland limits.
Yeah.
Does that make sense here, John? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. I agree 100%. They'll need to show that on the survey plan. Where the wetlands is.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I agree.
The plan really, I can appreciate that there are issues with the house, but yeah, we definitely need to see more detail and a more detailed plan. Okay, so that's received. Correspondence. We've got an application.
It's actually just a notice from the DEEP.
Okay. Right.
Letting the municipality agency know that they're going to be applying a pesticide. I'm sorry, herbicide for frag at 15.
Okay.
15 Willard Lane.
Yeah.
It's the Water and Wetland LLC. I think they're in Massachusetts. They've done this a lot. We get a lot of these notifications. It's 0.2 acres. It's they're using AquaPro, 0.2 gallons, and it's one application for the frag control. It's not in a it's basically a pond, you know, it's kind of a, it's DEP tidal wetland, but it doesn't ebb and flow. So it's it's very much contained. It's not part of a national diversity database. Not part of the aqua protection area. It's not part of a conservation or preservation restriction area. It's a pond. It's pretty straightforward. 0.2 acres.
All right. Yeah. Okay. It doesn't look, this is off. It's not even on the water.
No.
Yeah. Okay.
No, it's inland. It's trapped tidal. It's in a tidal wetland area, but it doesn't.
Right.
It's isolated.
Right. Okay. And that's not an action thing that they're just notifying us.
That's just a notification.
They notify us, and then if we have concerns, we can voice them, but it is their permit.
But Joe, you don't have any concerns, do you?
No.
Thank
No
you.
concerns.
Okay.
If you don't, I don't.
All right. And I'm assuming does anybody, if you have concerns, voice them now. Okay, so I'm gonna move on. All right, so now we have approval of minutes. So we pushed off minutes from last time, which is gonna kind of get us here. So we have the regular meeting minutes from February 7th, the sidewalk minutes from February 19th. This is all 2022, March 7th, March 10th, sidewalk minutes from March 26th. Does anybody have any?
I'll admit, I still haven't read them. I think I'm scared. And I don't think I would find anything wrong with them. They're so long.
Joe.
But I haven't read them.
Oh my God.
Been busy.
Okay.
But I'm just one guy.
Yep.
Maybe somebody else read them.
Yeah,
Maybe
two other
read
people.
them. I have read them. Has anybody else read them?
Only the one from the last meeting that I attended.
Speak. Okay. Well,
Bob?
No, well, which ones are you talking about?
any.
What?
Have you read any?
November on? Are we talking November on?
Yes. Yes.
We're talking 2 Februaries, March 7th and March 10th.
Definitely not February, definitely not March.
Okay,
Not
he's
the
out.
site walk. I wasn't on any of those 2 site walks or March or regular meetings. I think I was in February, but I don't remember. No, I think I missed the last 2 meetings, regular meetings.
All right.
So March 10th
So
has 2 readers.
I'd be abstaining anyways, so.
Okay. I have read them. There are a few typos that that are not critical, I don't think, to call out. But I don't know. It sounds like I'm the only one who's read them. Guys, come on.
Has John not read them?
He's being very quiet.
Okay, because he can't help get March 10th off the board. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think I have any executive privileges here to just move them forward. So, all right, you guys have to read all the stuff.
Read
I read March.
All the stuff.
I promise.
For the next meeting, please.
I have one question. Can we ditto the other 2 Wildwoods? We only did one of them.
No, we did all 3.
I think we did them all.
No, we did all 3. We did them all
3.
together. They're done. We're done.
Yeah, we did them all together.
Done. We are done with.
From the guy that abstained.
Yeah, we're done with Wildwood. Okay. All right. So you have to read. You have homework for next time, people.
Minutes.
Okay. So let me look. Those are my remarks. You have to read the stuff for next time. So John, do you have any remarks?
Ditto.
Okay. Okay, well, this is our favorite motion of the evening. Does anybody want to make it?
Make a motion to adjourn.
I second.
Yeah, everyone woke up all of a sudden.
John
All right.
seconded.
All in favor? Raise your hand.
Aye.
All right. See you next time after
Thank
you
you,
read all the
Kia.
stuff.
Nice
Thank
job,
you.
everybody.
Everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Take
Good
care.
job.
Bye.